Why did they even fucking bother with the camo paint? What are they trying to do? What are you hiding?
No, it's birchwood. That's the natural.
Oh, interesting.
This is now episode 7 of the Hot Air Outtake podcast.
Wow, 7 whole episodes.
Indeed.
We've made it this far without having a giant argument that ruins everything.
Yeah,
we've gotten close.
Yeah, on a few occasions, but no, there's not been any sort of like a crisis of ownership, or like, you know, like in a band when the bass player wants a solo in the song. You know, we haven't had any moments like that yet.
Well, until we start trying to divvy up the BetterHelp money. Just bleep that.
Yeah, I think
other sponsors are available.
So much has happened again, and so much of it is in relation to the previous episode yet again. We can't say anything on this podcast. We can't say a single word.
If you were here last month and you listened intensely to everything we said and has taken it to heart, please try and forget it. It was all wrong. Yeah. I don't know what else to say. It's just everything we say ends up being some incorrect way of predicting.
Yeah,
but like in the right general vein. But
exactly,
it's
kind of like the monkey's paw kind of thing, where it becomes true in a way, but not the way you want.
No, not in the way that gets us to say "I told you so." Unfortunately,
exactly. But we'll start things off with show and tell, just to recoup, you know, a little bit of dignity, maybe.
Well, we can't be objectively wrong about opinion-based things. So the more of those
exactly.
we do.
Yeah, in fact, because these are in fact 100% right, and you can't go against us in any way.
And that's a lot of Renault 12s.
Indeed. So I know it's sort of like a bit of a thing that people point out, but recently I've just sort of been really fascinated a little bit with just how unique Australia had it in terms of cars that were made in Australia. You know, because I have a population of, even now, the Australian population is, I think, less than 30 million.
Yeah, it's not big at all.
Not big at all. Certainly, like, half the population of the UK. And yet, for about half the 20th century, and with some vehicles, especially bottom left beyond it, they had cars that were completely developed and unique, exclusive to Australia. In some case, even both the car and engine. You know, everything was just built from the ground up for a country of, like, that has the population of about the average US state.
Yeah.
It is fascinating when you kind of, you know, always companies seem to be talking about world cars and making vehicles to kind of, you know, conquer every market, but Australia for a very long time was just its own market, and you had to build something for Australia or they weren't going to buy it.
Yeah.
It was only until, like, even I would say, I mean, obviously I've never been to Australia, but even until like the late 80s and 90s, it was still very much cars built for other markets just didn't do particularly well, or, you know, they might have sold because they were cheap, but they weren't well received by Australians because they had such unique requirements.
Well, it was like it was the 2008 financial crisis, wasn't it? That really, like, that was the flip point, because it was when Holden disappeared.
Yeah, and weirdly enough, much to the chagrin of Australians, it wasn't even really Australia's fault.
No.
That they went away, because Australia was quite famously one of the few Western economies that didn't really get affected by 2008, at least to the same extent. Between 2008 and 2012, they were one of the only Western economies that experienced net growth. But it was mainly like, you know, the American companies having to withdraw to save their money.
Yeah. Well, you know, GM was in... Well, we know what GM was doing up to at that point.
They'd served their sentence and they were allowed to leave Australia.
You'll wind up
sorry,
all 12
Australia,
of them
we're
with
British.
that.
We gotta do it. We gotta make the joke at least once, right? You know,
Yeah.
it's just sort of it's like a little nervous twitch we have as British people.
I have to be like, you have to be culturally insensitive to Australians at least once if you're talking about it.
Yeah. Like we
I'm
got it
sure
out
we'll
the
get it
way.
back
We
in
got
the
it out the way.
comments.
We can
Yeah.
move on now. You know. But another part of it was also Australia did maintain pretty high tariffs, as I understand it, on automobiles for quite a long time. So a certain percentage of even the components had to be manufactured in Australia. You couldn't without being hit by the tariffs. And that was until I think maybe the 80s and 90s. If I'm wrong, I'll flash up a thing on the screen. But either way, you know, it meant that sort of Australia in a way was almost kind of like the bonus track of the world in terms of automobiles. And some examples I've got on screen, I've tried to be sort of not, you know, go straight for the, you know, Holden, Ford Falcon, sort of bread and butter that everyone knows about. You know, everyone knows about the Barra 6. It's an awesome engine, but, you know, we know about it. I've tried to sort of go a little bit off the beaten path. So in the top left is the Austin Kimberley.
Okay.
Which...
That's an interesting name.
Yeah. It's sort of... That's the more luxurious version. There was also a more entry-level version called the Austin Tasman.
Okay.
And
Right.
it is based on the ADO 18 Land Crab, but with a boot.
I like him.
Yeah.
It looks so strange though with that. Like it's like looking at something that you recognise, but it's been slightly changed. Well,
It's got-
well
I
done.
mean, yeah,
It's got
that
the
is what it
proportions.
is, but-
It's got the
Yeah, it's
proportions of a
'cause-
rear-engined car.
Yeah, it kind of does. Which is bizarre because one of the things that, because it was based on the ADO 18, it was sort of lauded in Australia as being more technologically advanced than the Holden and Ford equivalents because it was front-wheel drive.
Yeah.
And the other interesting thing about it is that it's to give it a bit more grunt for the Australian market. They took the overhead cam E-Series straight 4 engine that was developed in Britain, bolted 2 extra cylinders on the end and made a straight 6 out of it. Still not a very big one. It's a little over 2.2 litres. But, you know, 2.2 litre overhead cam straight 6 front wheel drive. It's really weird.
That's pretty unique.
Yeah, it's a pretty bizarre concoction of technology going on there. And that...
Did people like them?
I mean, there seems to be a pretty strong following for them now. It didn't seem... I don't think it sold especially badly.
Okay.
Unlike its successor on the right, but we'll get to that.
Can I just like, were they made as knockdown kits then? Would they have been, or because it's got the boot, would it have been its own?
No, Leyland had a factory in Australia. I believe it was in the Sydney area, which was, I think that's also where Ford were based, sort of around the Sydney area, if I remember correctly.
I'm nodding with no knowledgement.
Exactly. Yeah. So pensive nod. But the conversion of the E-Series to a straight 6 was so successful that British Leyland back in the UK copied it for the Wolseley version.
Oh.
Oh, interesting.
So it's sort of, you know, the exchange. The E-Series was first developed as a straight 4 in the UK. They were making that. It then started making it in Australia. They then converted it into a straight 6 for this, and then British Leyland back in Britain copied it. So it was just it's a very sort of interesting sort of circular thing there. I think it's quite entertaining.
Yeah.
But then the Kimberley was then succeeded by the Leyland P76, which
Yeah.
I mean is pretty cool.
Well, it was Australian Car of the Year, wasn't it? The V8
I
version.
think, yeah.
I believe it was Australian Car of the Year in
'cause I think
some year.
73 was when I think it launched, maybe 74.
I think it might have been slightly later than that. I think it might have been 75, 76. It was Australian Car of the Year.
Right.
But famously, thank you to Corsicar for imbuing me with this knowledge. It could fit a full-size barrel in
Damn
the
it,
boot.
I was going to say that. It's like the one piece of knowledge that everyone knows.
The only thing I know about any of these cars is that.
Yeah. Because they put a lot of money into the P76, like, and the kind of platform and everything, because they had plans for like a coupe and like
Yeah, the
different models and stuff.
47 was what I think the coupe was called.
Then
And
it
yeah, it
wasn't-
had a 4.4 litre version of the Rover V8. It had a 2.6 litre straight six that was an enlarged version of the Kimberley engine. So, you know, it and the press loved it. The press really liked it, hence Australian Car of the Year. But it launched at a time when the Australian economy wasn't doing very well. There was a lot of inflation at the time. And, of course, mid-70s, oil crisis. And this was a 4.4 litre big V8 saloon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just extremely poor timing. There were some
Slightly
plans
doomed.
before production stopped, because production of this only lasted for like 3 years, I think. It was very short-lived. But if it had gone on a bit longer, there were plans to import it into the UK.
Oh, wow. What a terrible idea. I would have
Yeah.
loved one.
Because we all know how well the Lonsdale went.
The what? Exactly.
Yeah, if you want a laugh, look up Mitsubishi Lonsdale. It's a good one. In the middle, that is the final generation of the Chrysler Valiant. So
Okay.
again, Chrysler had a factory in Australia, and at first they just sort of started making a copy of the Plymouth Valiant, but sold it as a Chrysler. And then, much like the Ford Falcon, that was slowly sort of developed and evolved into a completely unique thing that was just for Australia.
Very cool.
And
Because it was the straight six, the Charger one that's always kind of the famous one. But I guess I've never really thought about the other ones. But
yeah, so the Valiant Charger was just basically a coupe version of this car, or previous generations thereof.
yes, right.
But, and although the V8 in this was just like the Chrysler small block V8 ubiquitous, the straight six was a complete, maybe not ground up, probably based it on, a existing Chrysler straight six, but it was then developed into its complete own unique thing just for Australia. So the Valiant Charger is, the platform's Australian, the body's Australian, the engine is Australian. It's like, again, just sort of come back to why I'm sort of on this. Complete unique sports car developed for a market of 20 million people at the time, probably.
It's, yeah, I mean...
It's so cool. It's so unique.
And just sort of like, what even really blows my mind, bottom left here, that is the Ford LTD. They were still making this into like the late 2000s. Like you can see from that design language, that is, fairly recent-ish Ford design language. And that's like almost Mercedes S-Class sized car.
Presumably that was based on the AU Falcon. Right?
It was based on the... Yeah, like it was essentially a long wheelbase version of the then BF. That's the BF Fairlane, which I think is based on the BF Falcon.
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
But it is essentially, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, essentially a long wheelbase version of the Falcon. But because it's a long wheelbase version of an already fairly big car, this is a, in European terms, this is approaching sort of S-Class, Audi A8, limo territory. You could get this with screens in the backs of the headrests, This was, I'm pretty sure LTDs were used by the Australian government as in European countries, you get like the big, in France, you have the Citroen C6 as like the big luxury car that they ship around the president in. Yeah. Germany, you have like the S classes. In Australia, they had Ford LTDs because they were big, luxurious, high class vehicles. And it's, again, sort of nowhere else in the world would you have a Ford badged limo, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, even in the US, that would be a Lincoln.
I'd have one of those. That's exactly the kind of car that I find really interesting.
Yeah.
Just really strange. Presumably it's got some pretty large engine options.
Oh, yeah. So lower trim versions of the Fairlane were, of course, available with the Barra.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this LTD does not have a sort of purely Australian engine. It was a 5.4 litre version of the Ford Modular imported from Canada. But, again, something that completely baffles me, variable valve timing.
Oh, okay.
In, like, the mid to late 2000s on a 5.4 litre single overhead cam cast iron V8.
Awesome.
Yeah. Where else?
I don't really know why, but it's awesome.
Like, that's so much more technologically advanced than you would have any right to expect it to be. It's brilliant.
I like that.
But just to show, again, how like, a bonkers proposition this car is, they were making, like, 250 of these a year.
Right.
And they were still developing facelifts and new technology for them throughout the 2000s.
Wow.
Yeah, no wonder Ford was in a rush to get out. They cannot possibly have been turning big profits on cars like that.
No. But finally, in the bottom right, this is not a car that was at all developed just for Australia. I just think it's cool. Because in the early 60s, Studebaker bought like a facility in Melbourne to assemble complete knockdown kits shipped from their Canadian factory.
Yeah.
But like, you could buy pretty much anything in the Studebaker model range apart from the Avanti as a right-hand drive car in Australia, including the supercharged version of the Gran Turismo Hawk, which made it the fastest production car in Australia for quite some time.
That's so cool.
A car of which probably about a dozen were sold.
If that, But...
Yeah, I was going to say. Fabulous.
But yeah, God bless you, Australia, for doing this wild and crazy shit. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic to think about. Just this island that has their own kind of unique car culture and, well, that's not unique, but their own car demands that so many manufacturers were willing and looking to fill for so long.
But yeah, moving on, who is this next slide?
This is me. Now,
right. This is a bit of an eclectic collection.
It's very eclectic, and I was gonna ask if you could both just briefly. I won't leave you sitting in this one for too long, but have a think about what you think the link might be.
Are they all Renault 12s?
Well, of course they are, of course, all Renault 12s. But there's a more pertinent link between all of these cars.
Okay. I mean, they're all sort of... on a vague spectrum of white to blue.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are relative. It's a consistent color palette.
All
That's not the reason.
produced in somewhere. I don't know. I it's just like there's no. I mean, well, you got to explain what the link is, but from me looking at it, there's like 5-6 different brands. Actually, no, more than that, but different types of car, and no, I can't. No, personally, I cannot think of a single link between that would link everything here.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
no, I'm coming up dry unless it's something sort of really, really obscure, like, they all had like the same ABS diagnostic issue or something along those lines, but
that
no.
wouldn't make a great show and tell. I don't think.
No, it wouldn't.
Unfortunately.
No.
So this is slightly morbid.
Oh,
These
dear,
are
is
the
it-
10 deadliest cars in the world.
Oh.
And that is that is not in absolute terms, because of course some of these sold a lot more than others. This is
in per
the
capita.
cars responsible for the most road deaths per billion miles driven
So, yeah,
Right.
so sort of like
in
a
the world, across the entire planet.
sort of like a per capita thing, then. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's and I saw this list, and some of the entries I think give rise to some interesting discussions about vehicle safety and how important or not it may be, depending on whereabouts on the scale you land. So,
sorry, I'm just assuming that this covers for like the Corvette and the 911. This covers every generation.
no. So there's some caveats to this.
Right,
This is
okay.
this is the deadliest car, the deadliest top 10 deadliest cars in the world, per per distance covered. For 5 years up to 2023, including
Right.
only cars that you could buy new during that period. So it's only the generations you see on screen.
Oh, okay. Bloody hell. Okay.
So I think we should work backwards. The slide isn't exactly in order, but the 10th deadliest car in the world, with a fatal accident rate of 8 per billion miles driven, which is 2.8 times the global average, is in the top right. It is the Buick Envision. And
Well, I mean, it's envisioning something, but
I'm envisioning a world where it doesn't exist.
I'd hit a bridge support if I was in that. It's about as boring as cars can be.
Yeah.
yeah.
Why is that so much deadlier? Who knows? Maybe it's the drivers. I imagine they sell them predominantly in North America.
Yeah, you presume, but I mean, I guess this is a trying to work out game, but there is no correct answer. I guess there's just a combination of reasons.
Yeah.
It gets more interesting the closer we get to the worst one. But number 9, in it's the blue Kia, the Kia Forte. To me, that looks like a perfectly standard car.
Yeah.
You are 3 times more likely to die in that than an average vehicle.
That's
Wild.
Which is insane.
Yeah, that might be. And is this? You said this is worldwide. This isn't just North America.
This is global. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this is worldwide.
Okay, because you know how like in America there's sort of a little bit of a stigma around like big Ultima energy. You know, like
Yeah.
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 There is something like the Kia Forte for me fits in that sort of same genre somehow.
Yeah.
But maybe that's a little bit prejudiced of me because the Kia is on the list and the Ultimate isn't.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's something to do with how easy Kias are to steal in the US.
Forgot about
that's
that one.
an interesting thought. Yeah.
It could just be that a lot of them are nicked and then crashed in police chases when they get pit maneuvered at 125 miles per hour. But then you'd expect to see
that's a
more.
good call.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe. Maybe. The next one on the list, number 8, is the car to its right, the Buick Encore GX, which is, as far as I can tell, is that an Opel Crossland or whatever the fuck they're called? Just
Something
rebadged
like that.
for North America. But the Opel's not on the list, which means this is a uniquely American one. I know they don't have great road safety out there, but
the Encore GX is the one that. Oh, okay. Because the Envision is only made in China. It's sold into the US, but the only place it's made is China. The Encore GX is both made in China and South Korea.
Oh. Do they get
They must sell them out there then. I assumed I assumed that Buick badged cars were North American only, but clearly I'm wrong.
No, Buick as a brand, until fairly recently, was wildly popular in China.
Really?
Yeah, because it was. I mean, it was sort of seen as like it's a luxurious American brand. You're cashing in on the Western decadence. That was, denied for so many decades. That is until, as I understand it, fairly recently, because they fucked it up once again. Because Buick is no longer as successful in the US because it's seen as a bit of an old man brand, right? Bloody Buick, right? Now, the exact same thing is happening in China. Because so many people bought Buicks that now the new generation of car buyers in China see it as an old man's car.
Also, look at them. They are so monumentally, almost offensively boring. And as it turns out, very, very dangerous. Which could be the drivers, it could be the cars. I don't know. I think, I was about to say, because there is... there's technically 3 companies that are on here twice because Kia and Hyundai are the same company. I was going to make a comment about that earlier, but now I think it's especially bad because we're up to we've only got 7 left, and so
Mitsubishi are 2 of them.
Number 7 is the bottom left. It is the Mitsubishi Mirage G4, I think it is. It's like the coupe saloon version of the Mirage.
Yeah.
I don't actually know what markets they sell those in. I don't believe they're available in Europe and North America, but I could
they
be
are
wrong.
in North America. I thought it was the cheapest car in North America for a very long time.
I think the regular Mirage was.
Yeah, maybe not specifically this one then. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if they sold it in the US, just because, there is still a bit of, long-standing cultural neglect of the hatchback in the US. So, you have to have
they like
sedan.
their saloons. Yeah, sedans, sorry.
Yeah. So it wouldn't surprise me if they do sell that in the US, but these, very small Mitsubishis in general have always struck me as being more popular in places like Southeast Asia, the Middle East.
Yeah. And it is worth clarifying. I don't know if I said it earlier. This is specifically the rate of fatal accidents, not the overall accident rate, and that will become important. With
right?
some,
I did sort of. Yeah, this is deaths.
This is deaths. So number 6 is the Tesla Model Y.
Yep.
And the Tesla Model Y comes in at a 3.7x multiple on the average.
Fuck. Jesus.
Which is pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty bad.
That's not good.
And this one is the first one that we can raise a concrete, interesting point about, which is that that's not an unsafe car. That car has got very, very strong safety ratings by pretty much every safety rating agency.
Yeah.
Right? Which means it's the drivers.
Yeah.
Either it's...
It just is.
Yeah.
It has to be.
It has to be the drivers, or maybe the self-driving. You know, we've
True.
commented on this podcast before.
It's that, yeah. There's definitely some of that. However, I do have some data that suggests it is actually the drivers.
Wow.
This is North American data, but Tesla drivers consistently rank in the top 3 brands for the number of non-fatal accidents, the number of DUIs, the number of speeding, and other traffic citations and violations. So
Sometimes there's just so much beauty in the world, you know? Like, you can't make this up.
Yeah.
Like, you can't. It's
yeah, it's obviously it's not good, but I'm sorry if you use a glorified cruise control system believing it's going to get you to work while you fall asleep at the wheel, then
While drunk.
you know the central reservation will meet you one day. That's just how it works.
I'm fairly certain whichever agency or organization collected that data, probably going to receive a knock on the door from the Department of Government Efficiency, I think.
There's
soon.
Something wrong with what they're doing. I don't know. But
Well, if the Department of Government Efficiency take it in their stride to completely dismantle the car insurance industry, then it might be the only good thing.
Oh right,
they've
is
done.
that wow? Okay. No, it wouldn't surprise me that if Musk goes in a sort of full out crazy libertarian, why do I need a license to drive my own car direction? Because that kind of thing benefits him. It's what his audience wants to hear, you know.
And the more Teslas get crashed, the more people have to keep buying new ones.
To keep buying Tesla.
Okay, number
Yes,
5,
yes.
big jump up here in
wow.
in rate of death. Unfortunately, we're at 4.6 times the average. It is the Honda CR-V hybrid. This one completely baffles me. It's a safe car. It's a big car. I would have assumed they're driven by sensible people. So maybe there's something about this car that I don't know.
I mean, I've always thought that the CR-V, something about its proportions just strike me, and I have no idea if this will be related to statistics at all, or if it's even, you know, a major contributor. It's always struck me particularly as a car that would absolutely, like, catastrophically fail the Moose test.
Yeah, they are quite tall, and they're quite narrow as well.
Yeah.
So maybe because, you know, rollover accidents are also one of the most
the most
dangerous
fatal
kind of accident
kinds,
you
yeah.
can have. You know, maybe there's something to that. But if that was the case, then you'd expect this whole list to be SUVs.
True.
It's not.
And it's only about half.
Yeah, it's I to be honest, I'd say SUVs are probably underrepresented on this list compared to the proportion of overall car sales
That might be a function
represent.
of because they're all, like, the 2 Mitsubishis on this list are very small cars. That might be a function of the fact that there's so many other SUVs on the road that when small cars get crashed into, they're in more risk. And
Perhaps.
I don't think that's a fault of the cars being small. I think that's a fault of so many cars being so big these days, frankly.
yeah.
Perhaps. The next one, and it's unfair to say this is more dangerous than the Honda. It's a dead heat. It is the Porsche 911.
Exactly
I can
equivalent
understand.
vehicles.
Yeah.
Now that is just people buying them and not understanding what they're driving.
Yeah.
Surely.
And just
They're
being,
just so-
yeah.
They're so, even a base 911 is so incredibly fast nowadays that it's just people who, you know, don't.
What's the name of, like, the worst streamer on the planet who crashed his McLaren? I can't remember his name.
Jack
Oh,
something.
I know
Yeah,
exactly.
that little gimp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That it's that exact
People
situation.
like that,
basically,
yeah.
yeah.
Or what's his name? The guy who decided to do the 110 through a school zone or something during the car review. Just people like that who are
Oh,
just...
MKBHD did that, didn't he? And it fucking...
Oh, yeah, it was, wasn't it? Yeah.
What was he driving? Was it a Lamborghini?
I think so, yeah. But just like, no
What a
regard
prick.
for, press throttle pedal, nyum, and then big crash 10 seconds later.
Yeah.
That doesn't come as much as a surprise. Also because even though it's basically mid-engine now, the 911 is still, I would say, probably one of the more unpredictable handling vehicles of that power, I think it's safe to say.
Yeah, like the engine being certainly further back than even a mid-engine car.
Yeah.
It's making things a little bit twitchy. Even however many decades of work Porsche has poured into making the rear engine formula as controllable as they can, it's an uphill battle.
Yeah. It's
You can't as clever as Porsche's engineers are, they can manipulate the forces of physics, but they can't rewrite them. It just doesn't work that way.
But they could try.
But none of the reasons why we reckon that the 911 is so dangerous apply to the number 3 most deadly car in the world, which is the Mitsubishi Mirage. And is that just due to the markets that it's sold in?
Yeah, I think that's also really it's one thing for the same brand to be on the list twice. It's another thing for essentially the same car to be on the list twice.
Yeah. It's not a great look.
It's interesting that the hatchback is more dangerous than the saloon.
Yeah, what does that say about hatchback
Is it just the fact that
buyers?
the saloon effectively has more crumple zone on the back?
Maybe.
It's possible. It's definitely possible. I can't claim to know the answer to that.
Yeah.
No.
Unfortunately. But yeah, it's I think maybe it would be worth trying to find out where the Mitsubishi Mirage is more popular than any other car in its class, because my guess would be if you're selling a lot in, say, India, for example, which isn't well renowned for its strong road safety enforcement, maybe that's tipping the numbers in favor of cars that sell more in India.
And again, that would be a reason that would contribute to there being fatal accidents in those countries. And when the Mitsubishi Mirage is sold in the United States, Europe, even Japan, the fact that there are so many big SUVs on the roads in those countries would also mean that in those countries it does not perform so well in terms of fatalities. So
yeah.
I think either way you slice it, it's a tough time for small cars like the Mitsubishi Mirage. But I also think
is it also
interesting-
potentially that they're driven almost exclusively by very old people, though, as well? Is that potentially a contributing factor? Because I went to Tesco the other day. It's about a 20-minute round trip for me to get to a big Tesco, right? And just on the way back the other day, 2 old people had driven into the back of other people in traffic.
Oh no. I was out in the middle of the Yorkshire Dales cruising with some friends, and we literally 10 seconds ahead of us, we were driving along kind of in convoy, and there was a big tipper truck up ahead, and somebody in a VW Golf just pulled straight out in front of it and got absolutely destroyed up the rear end by
Christ.
it. We were driving along, and there's just like bits of Golf littering the road. And this person
Well, that is a
getting out.
scenario in which you'd want to be in the G4 as
Yeah,
opposed to the
true.
normal Mirage.
Indeed.
Yeah.
There we go. My hypothesis proving somewhat correct.
Yeah.
I do think, though, that there's another thing to point out, that Mitsubishi are not the only company that make a Mirage-sized car and sell into the same market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
think,
very true.
There's a
wonder
lot of
if,
very small cars like the Mitsubishi Mirage being sold in Southeast Asia, India, these kinds of countries. I think maybe the reason the Mitsubishi Mirage is on this list and those cars aren't is because the Mirage is still somewhat popular in the US and Europe and Japan, maybe. And
It's
more of them,
entirely possible.
to quote Joe Rogan.
They may also just be built worse.
That
because
is
if it
also
was
a
if it was a
factor,
class thing,
Yeah.
There's a reason that the Mitsubishi Mirage is the cheapest car in the US.
Yeah.
yeah, if it was just to do with the class of vehicle, again, this whole list would be populated by just subcompacts, and it isn't.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a reason why it's the Mirage, and 2 different variants of the Mirage rather than the. Actually, I'm trying to think of any other subcompact sold in the US, but there are some.
Number 2.
Number
2.
Oh, hang on. Yeah, there's only two left who it can be.
Oh.
Number 2 coming in at 4.8 times the average. Go on.
Yeah, no, this is a tough one. Probably the only situation I'd ever have to choose between a Hyundai and a Corvette.
The Corvette's got to be second. I cannot believe that the Corvette is the deadliest vehicle per however many miles.
I don't know. Okay,
It is indeed the Corvette.
Okay.
Corvette is number 2, 4.8 times the average. I think it's basically just the Porsche problem, but worse because because
the Corvette's
I think they've
cheaper,
got more power and they're cheaper, and more, and like they are predominantly a North American car, and the US has quite famously deadly roads.
And yeah, I guess they're also going to be the most likely to be the kind of fast vehicle owned by someone who is just hanging on to life.
Yeah.
The boomer Corvette jokes exist for a reason,
Well, it is. Yeah, there's kind of two kinds of people who are going to buy Corvettes. It's like old people and like people who are really not very experienced driving fast cars.
Yeah,
and it's their first one.
Yeah. So it kind of fits. It's 2 demographics where you can kind of understand how this would happen.
And it wouldn't surprise me if the Corvette had gone up the rankings since becoming a mid-engined car.
Yeah, true.
Because when you do lose control, recovering it is even for people who've like driven and owned potentially previous generation Corvettes, like the dynamics of the rear end letting go in a mid-engine car are very, very different.
Oh yeah,
it's the same model of car that they've had for 20 years, but it's a completely different animal when you're pushing it.
Exactly.
And I think also the fact that it became mid-engined, it became more cool to a younger demographic who would fit into that same demographic we were talking about of people not being as experienced with a car this powerful. And so maybe because it became more popular among that demographic, then that would also contribute towards things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which brings us neatly to the deadliest car. Well, I don't know if it's the deadliest car for 5 years up to 2023 that you could buy new in that time period. The Hyundai Venue, which is very nearly 5 times deadlier than average.
That is terrifying.
Oh my God.
And again, this is one of those cars where it's so much worse, right?
But why?
But I can't work out why.
Yeah.
Really.
I mean, the one thought I just had is, what if it's like an popular Uber car, maybe? And their, drivers are working long hours and tired and whatever. But I don't think it particularly is it? Obviously, I don't know much about US Uber, but I thought that was normally like hybrids and stuff like that.
I've just checked, because of where it's made, because it's made in a lot of different places. We may also be having sort of like the Mitsubishi Mirage,
But that doesn't explain why it's so much deadlier than the Mitsubishi Mirage.
Like what's going on here? Is this thing made of just like tinsel? That's the only thing.
But it can't be that badly made, because that one in the picture's got an Ontario reg plate.
Yeah.
So that one that's a Canadian car, right?
In 2021, the IIHS awarded the Hyundai Venue a Top Safety Pick Key Award.
So why do so many people die in them? It doesn't make any sense.
It had good scores in every single metric that the IIHS measures, apart from front crash prevention, vehicle to pedestrian, and child seat anchors and headlights.
But none of those things are particularly directly likely to affect the fatality numbers of occupants of the vehicle. It's not like it says, "Oh,
Yeah.
if you hit a wall at 5 miles per hour, it explodes."
Its front crash protection vehicle to vehicle is superior.
So here's my thesis then, right? My thesis is that crash safety and vehicle safety overall has reached a point where the difference in safety between a very safe car and a very unsafe car is less consequential than the difference in skill of the person driving it.
Right.
Yeah.
It has to be, because that car's it's a super safe car, passed all the tests, and it is the deadliest car in the world. There's only one factor that we're not taking into account there. It's the people driving them.
Yeah.
Maybe... even if it passed all the tests, though, I mean, I obviously I haven't seen many recent IIHS test things. I'm not entirely familiar with how they do them, but from what I've seen, when they have like the big rig that they send crashing into the side of a car to do like a side impact test. Even in recent ones I've seen, they seem to use sort of like a fairly low cart effectively to do that. Is that really, even though it's a test meant to test like how safe a car will be on the road, is that really taking into account the fact that a lot of cars these days are quite tall?
I think there's certainly something to that. But again, the question becomes, even if we take that on board, how is that Hyundai more dangerous relative to even the other cars on this list, which are all tested to the same standards?
Yeah.
Every single theory I have has a fairly reasonable rebuttal, so I'm just kind of confused. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it's also the fact that car safety has gotten so good these days that it almost doesn't maybe these sort of are just flukes of statistics that these are the ones that are the most unsafe. But then again, 5 times.
And it's per billion miles driven, and these are not rare cars. Most of these at least are not rare cars. So there's a big sample size here. It can't just be a fluke.
Here's another thing I'm thinking maybe. Even if it's per billion miles driven, and we're doing a per capita thing. Even taking that into account, if these cars are so popular and there's so many of them, they will still be more likely to be involved in a crash, even if we're doing per billion miles, maybe.
I'm not sure, because again, though, because this isn't absolute numbers. This is and this isn't how many accidents. This is how many accidents that resulted in an occupant fatality. In it, is it an occupant fatality in these vehicles specifically, or a fatality in the crash in general, like the other person in these vehicles? In these vehicles, right? I think that we need more statistics, really. I think to draw a proper conclusion. We just need more information.
Is this the bit where we turn over to the comments and say, people, if you have any theories, please do enlighten us? Because some of these make sense. I can understand the Tesla, the sports cars, or the supercars, whatever you want to say. The tiny, like the Mirages, I can get that. Even the, all of those are. I can understand why they would be a certain amount more than the usual. But for the rest, just because they're a big SUV, or a larger crossover than other vehicles, surely that doesn't mean 5 times as deadly, because that's the average size of a vehicle in the US now, I would suspect, that Hyundai. And yet how is that almost 5 times more deadly?
I think that Hyundai is quite small.
Quite small. That's a small Hyundai. It's it's only slightly bigger, really. I mean, slightly bigger. It's maybe 1 or 2 orders of magnitude bigger than the Mirage. It's a very small crossover.
But well, then that's something to do with it. But again, does that explain 5 times? Not really. That doesn't.
And it doesn't really explain the CRV or the Buicks. or the Tesla Model Y, which is like a pretty big car.
Well, yeah, but if you were talking about the safety rating of Tesla drivers, I can understand that. Also with autopilot and stuff like that, I can see how that would happen.
It's not very surprising.
Being camera only when it comes to safety systems and stuff like that. I can see that, but I just don't get it for a lot of the other ones. I just don't get what makes one regular crossover that you would see 20 of every journey 5 times less safe or 4 times less safe than any other.
Yeah.
This vexes me.
Really, really bizarre.
I found this really, really interesting because it does kind of like, and something that the study with those numbers says is that on average for the last few decades, roads have become much safer, and far fewer people die in all types of cars, and that is of course as a result of increases in crash safety regulations. But it does seem that there is an increase in cases of accidents resulting from distracted driving.
Yeah.
And accidents involving large amounts of speed. But again, like the speed thing doesn't really explain that Hyundai or the Mirage because they're never going to be going very fast.
Yeah.
So it's tough. It's I guess the moral is pay attention. Don't drink and drive, and whatever you do not buy a Mitsubishi Mirage.
Or Hyundai Venue.
Yeah, or Hyundai Venue.
Or anything here, really. Well, buy a Corvette or a 911, but be safe.
Yeah, I'm built different, so I can drive.
Oh yeah, we'd all be fine.
I'm not the same. I'm not saying I'd simply not crash.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Yeah.
So moving on to a topic that hasn't ever been covered before. I want to talk about Australian cars.
Oh wow, that's really cool.
Oh wow.
Oh, I just had that on the mind before.
Yeah, but you should have said something. You should have said.
Oh, that's really interesting.
A genuine coincidence.
I've always wanted to know more about Australian domestic.
Well, the reason why this came to mind is because I was in Manchester last weekend for one of my best friend's birthdays, and I will admit I was very, very drunk. But as I was walking down the road to go catch a bus, I saw this and was so baffled I took a picture, but I had no idea what it was. And it turns out to be a Ford Territory, which is an Australia only, like Barra SUV thing.
Yeah, I was going to say it's got the Barra 6 in it.
So it was just 99% of people, it's just another SUV, and it is. Obviously, except it is a Barra in the UK, which is very rare. But that got me thinking about how the Australian market has always had such a their own different, unique market of vehicles, despite being.
Wow, I'd never thought about it like that.
Yeah, now that you really put it that way, I guess they do.
But let's delete that out of the way. But my my thought process was actually on vehicles that were sold in Australia to try and conquer this market with varying levels of success. Because obviously we have Holden, Ford, Falcon, Commodore, all of the different variants of that. Those were successful for a very long time. Different generations, one might have been better than the other and whatever. But the whole time there were other manufacturers, other companies trying to get in on that. And I think the one that I want to touch on, I use this as an example because it's really awesome, but is Mitsubishi. Because for a long time, Mitsubishi were kind of the third manufacturer, from my understanding, in Australia, with things like the Magna. And then, unfortunately,
to sort of quickly jump in, the reason for that was because previously the third manufacturer was Chrysler, and the reason why Mitsubishi took over was because they bought the Chrysler factory in Australia.
Oh, that makes sense. I didn't know that, but yeah, that checks out. I believe you. Yeah, because I guess they did a lot of work with Chrysler, so it's kind of natural that they would take over one of their factories if they buggered off. Because I like the Magna, but it's a bit of a crap vehicles, in hindsight.
Insert dank pods joke about you when you see a Magna blowing smoke, etc., etc.
Yeah, that one gif of it just like pulling away from the lights and just a giant cloud of smoke. But I've always had a soft spot for the one that came after the Magna, which was supposed to kind of revitalise Mitsubishi's youthful image for their sedans, which was the 380, which completely flopped and killed Mitsubishi sedan manufacturing in Australia. Because he pictured here as one that I believe it was a concept that never kind of reached full production, but a TWR, it was a limited production TWR supercharged version of the Magna. So that's a 3.8 V6 with a supercharger going through the front wheels.
That's fabulous.
Because, there's just a lot to take in. Like, I'll give that a moment to set in. Can you imagine the talks? I mean, I know that Americans have done that with, the Buick, the 3800 series in the Monte Carlos and stuff. But that was always, from my understanding, quite a lethargic engine. It's a good engine, but it was
how Americans managed to get a 3.8 V6 with a supercharger and only get 240 horsepower out of it. That's almost artful. There's
it is.
It's talent, surely.
I think if this was probably like at least overhead cam, probably dual.
Yeah, I had the article that I was reading earlier, and then I
sure
closed
that's
it while
front-wheel
closing
drive?
my Bertoni 780 tabs. But still front-wheel drive and automatic.
I've got questions about that rear wing then.
It's wicked, cuz. I don't know. But so the 380 was kind of the death knell for big Mitsubishi sedans for Australia, which is a shame. But I'd just like to touch on a few of the other kind of attempts. And leading neatly on is, as you can see, the MG ZT. But this, in fact, because BMW, Rover, all of that,
I've seen 220 on that. That is really Please continue.
Well, they BMW let Rover sell the 75 and only the 75 in Australia because they didn't want the other models, the ZS and the ZR, cannibalising BMW sales. Once BMW buggered off and Phoenix 4 and we had the MG revival, they started selling all of the MG. I believe. Well, they still sold the 75 and then the ZT and then the ZS and the ZR. I might have said ZS and ZR instead of 45 and 25. But anyway, but to kind of go a bit further with what they had before, obviously, the V8 ZT and 260, they made the 220. So a bump of 30 horsepower over the regular 2.5 V6 by also bolting a supercharger on it.
Oh, brilliant!
Fabulous.
So this is, to me at least, the coolest, possibly the coolest of like that era of MG Rover product at all, because I love the ZT and it's a pre-facelift and it's got a supercharger on the V6. But obviously it wasn't really enough because when have you ever seen an Australian Rover product or MG product? But I again, it was them trying to kind of cater to this exclusive Australian market that I guess they thought demanded and probably did demand more horsepower than the regular V6 offered. Because when you think about it, with a car the size of the MG or the 75, the ZT, having the top engine be 190 horsepower, 2.5 V6, you'd expect
it's not
at least
super inspiring, is it?
No, and you think if it's like roughly halfway between a 3 Series and a 5 Series of the era, you could get a lot more power from one of those.
That's sort of the reason that sort of segment of vehicle died. Peugeot stopped making the big sort of 608, was it?
607,
I think.
Seven
because that was the same. It was like a big near 5 Series size car, but the most powerful engine was a 200 horsepower V6.
I think it's kind of forgivable for a 75 because it's kind of luxury, but for a ZT that's supposed to be the sporting model, 220 horsepower is looking a lot more like a serious contender. Jesus. And so I think it's a bit of a shame that they never actually brought this over here, that it was an Australia exclusive.
I am very interested to know what kind of supercharger that had. That is very interesting to me.
I'm sure there is a large rabbit hole that can be gone down because it's just something that we never got, and I think that's really sad. The fact that, you know, without meaning to sound all Brexit geezer, we made the bloody things, and we didn't even get the best one.
We used to make things in this country.
but like they
But like,
saved,
yeah, we did used to make things in this country, and that was cool.
and they saved the best, well, in my opinion, the best, because you know the V8 ones they're cool, but they're not really like serious
How
vehicles.
familiar are you with the prototypes of the X-Power version of the ZT? Are you?
Was that the supercharged one?
Yes. They basically took the engine from the X-Power SV and put it in a ZT.
God help me.
There are pictures of a working drivable prototype on the road. Like someone
my
took a
God.
picture from behind it at a stoplight. It was real. It was real, and it
That's pretty
probably
cool.
doesn't exist anymore because they probably
Yeah.
scrapped it. But it was real.
They probably scrapped it for like 7p so that they could
Yeah.
get a bit more money out of them before bankrupting them. But the other one that I wanted to, well, the third one I want to touch on is, as you can see, a US Ford Taurus.
Yes.
This baffles me because Ford have
The
Falcons that they make exclusively for Australia, as they're, you know, going from lower end but up to kind of luxury, comfortable sedans. Why would they then go through all the hassle of right-hand drive converting or making right-hand drive the Taurus to then also sell to cannibalize basically their own market share?
Yeah, I guess the Taurus is like a little bit smaller than the Falcon.
Yes, but does that matter
But like
much?
going to all the effort of importing it would probably increase the cost. So
Yeah, I think the figure that sticks in my mind for when I was looking at was like 45,000 Aussie dollars in the day, which would have been a lot. Like, I know that Aussie dollars aren't worth as much, but that's still a good chunk of change, because I think they only imported like the top trim ones because that makes more sense, I'm sure, to make it even more expensive.
They couldn't even market it on the basis that it's weird and ugly because they had the AU Falcon.
Exactly. Well, can you imagine this next to an AU at a dealership? That would have been like Ford Australia post ugliest dealership forecourt asked to leave the country.
I was just thinking, I was just in that well just then. Like, it's not an Australia specific point, of course, but good grief, that car is really, really quite uniquely hideous. Look at it. It looks like it looks like a jolly insect that's been squashed.
I have a soft spot for them, but it's also just a bit like of one of the worst vehicles ever designed, perhaps.
Yeah,
It looks like it really, really wants to be.
it looks
in the next plane, I think.
yeah, you know how like when you like hold a cat's ears back and kind of stretch its face.
I mean, but then with a similar point, if we go down to the bottom right, we have the Holden Epica.
Yeah, I just
Which
read
I
that.
I don't think
Which
that's
is
Apart from having a rather amusing name, is another similar idea of we're going to make a, you know, it's like a medium-sized vehicle that's basically cannibalizing our own sales that we probably make more money off because they're our own cars, because this is just a Daewoo with a Holden badge on it.
I was about to say if this is GM, then this will be a Daewoo.
Yeah. But the fascinating thing is, and the reason why I included this rather than all of the other possible Holden rebadges that they sold, is because these have a transverse, I think it's a 2-litre inline six.
Oh yeah, this is the Daewoo engine that's actually really cool, and they like co-designed with Porsche.
Yeah, Porsche engine. Well, Porsche. Maybe they just wrote Porsche on it in crayon, but
Yeah.
we don't know. But it's a cool engine.
Hang on.
But a
Hang
car.
on.
2-litre inline six.
I believe it's a 2-litre, yeah.
Transverse, 2-litre inline six, front wheel drive. It's just the Austin Kimberley again.
Oh my god. We're repeating. History repeats itself in Australia. I guess, to be fair, maybe they ran out of RAM for the simulation. They just had to start again from the beginning.
The rest of the world has the Renault 12, and Australia being a unique market, everything's just an Austin Kimberley.
Yeah, that's. There are two cars in the world. It's the Renault 12 and the Austin Kimberley. But yeah, it's obviously it didn't sell very well because it's a deeply terrible vehicle. But I wanted to bring up the fact that both of the manufacturers, the big two of Australia, tried to, at some point or another, to cannibalise their own sales with a vehicle that's inferior in every way.
The gall to call it the Epica as well. Can we just talk about that briefly? Like the sheer confidence to look at that and go, well, what are we going to call it? What are we going to call it?
This vehicle is the stuff of legend. This is Norse mythology going on with this thing.
There used to be on a group of people that I was friends with online. There used to be an image that was shared around quite frequently a number of years back. It's one of the adverts for this where it's just like facing dead on in like a black kind of plane that just has like the A of the number plate, like dealer plate, just scribbled out. So it's just the picture of the car. It just says Epic. And then I believe one of the edits of it was one of the headlights had like the sands blue eye. I just have that image locked in my brain whenever I think of this car. If I can find it, we can put it up on screen maybe. Yeah, what a deeply
please send me that if you can find it.
I will try. I will endeavour to try and find it. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but it just lodges in my brain sometimes. But if we move on, because the other thing that I find strange when you look at Australian car manufacturing is obviously they had their own kind of that you talked a lot about, their own kind of desire for big sedans and how companies will make specific stuff for that. But they also, just in general, have always been such a melting pot of different countries' offerings. Because, you obviously get a lot of stuff that they make from home.
Yeah, because this is a thought I've literally just had this second. Maybe Australia is sort of a popular testing place for exports.
I guess
because the market isn't very huge. It's not a massive expense, apart from the right-hand drive conversions. But most people have already done that for the UK market and Japan.
But you do need to ship them a long way.
You need to ship them a long way, but it's not a massive expense to withdraw operations because you don't have to set up a lot of capital because the population isn't huge.
Yeah, true.
Surely there are better places you could do that though.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just trying to. This is a weird,
trying to rationalise
the Australian phenomenon
because there's always been, obviously they get a lot of Japanese market stuff, whether as imports or sold directly, and there's European vehicles, and some occasional American stuff, and the stuff that's made in Australia and made exclusively for Australia. But I mean, I know I already mentioned Europe, but the thing that I've always found bizarre is the fact that they also were decent markets for French cars. I've never really imagined French cars doing particularly well outside of Europe, and I know they're a novelty in Japan and stuff like that, but Peugeot, Citroën, Renault all have had dealer networks and everything selling their offerings in Australia, which just is such a bizarre notion to me that my dad had a Peugeot 306 and someone in Queensland had a Peugeot 306 at the same time. But especially when it comes to their big luxury stuff like the 607, which probably sold about 6. It was the DS9 of Australia, I believe. That's what they called it. They didn't know why at the time.
And possibly another vehicle, but we're getting onto that one later.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves too much.
Yeah, but it's just looking at that with those Australian plates, it just looks so bizarre. But then you think about it, you think, well, I guess it is a big, luxurious, doesn't have to be particularly quick or good on fuel sedan that could do long miles. Why wouldn't it do well? But then the notion to me, I mean, you guys might see it differently, but for me personally, the idea of being an Australian and buying a French luxury saloon just doesn't compute. I don't understand why you do it, and I guess most people probably didn't. but it's just such a bizarre one to think about.
If I went to Australia and I left the airport and the first car I saw was a Peugeot, I'd be pretty upset.
Yeah.
Well, because it makes a bit more sense for me for like the small stuff, 206s and stuff like that, because a city car is a city car wherever you live. But for the big luxury things, while I guess it makes sense on paper, it just baffles me that they ever tried. And predictably, obviously, they didn't sell many. I don't know if stuff like the Citroen C6 ever got sold there. It's just come as a thought to me. But can you imagine trying to get parts for a big Citroen and its suspension in Australia?
You could make the argument, the sort of marketing point that like hydro-pneumatic suspension would make the Outback a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah, true. But then again,
until it very suddenly didn't make it more comfortable.
Yeah, I was going to say, if anything breaks, you're a skeleton. So, it's you can't just sit around lighting a cigarette and waiting for some tractor to drive past so you can hail a lift. You're just going to die. But then this kind of also somewhat leads on to my final one, which is obviously they get a lot of Japanese stuff over there. Imports are not that long. Jesus, English, man. Not particular old imports or vehicles in Japan lose quite a lot of value, so they import them to other countries, Australia, New Zealand, over here, to sell. But apparently somebody at Infiniti decided that they would try and sell the Q45, which was the US version. They had a JDM version of this. The President, I believe it was.
Yeah, that would be the Nissan Precedent.
But instead, they decided to right-hand drive, get the right-hand drive bits on an American Q45 and sell it as the Infiniti one.
I guess it's just a matter of putting the badges and the grille of the Infiniti on, and everything else is pretty much the same.
I guess, but maybe it was just an exercise in getting your brand known. Like the LS400. Didn't they lose money on every single one, but they got the people initial, to know Lexus? Yeah,
the initial LS400s, they lost money on each one, but there's a marketing term for that. It's a loss leader.
Yeah, well, yeah. I didn't pay much attention at school, so I forgot about that. But I guess it could have been a loss leader, but then again, it wasn't a particularly desirable.
Nobody liked them. They weren't popular cars.
No, they made them.
Infiniti as a brand was much more lazily put together than Lexus.
Yes, yeah.
Lexus, Toyota poured literally billions into over the course of half a decade before they even launched the LS400 in the US. Nissan, they just slapped a new badge on a car they were already making and sold it in the US.
Yeah.
The LS400, at least to my knowledge, wasn't based on any existing Toyota.
No,
I don't think it wasn't based on a Century. It was maybe tangentially related to the Toyota Celsior.
Well, the Celsior was just a rebadged LS400. It wasn't the other way round.
It's that way round then, even.
Yeah.
So, But that's sort of a different point.
This just came up to just the thought that baffles me, that selling the US car versus the JDM one, that you can just, Nissan could have just shipped across on a boat.
Because of the JDM thing, there was already a healthy respect for Japanese brands in Australia.
It wouldn't be like, and especially I would find it was more likely that Japanese luxury vehicles would have already been an established concept in Australia versus over here, because they've always, had access to whatever the best that Japan was selling to themselves a few years later. I can understand
misunderstanding where they fit in their own market. Who would have thought?
Nissan doing things to make money. Come on.
Segways are a beautiful thing, and I'm going to interrupt it because I found out something about the Mitsubishi. It's not as much power and torque as I thought. Again, never underestimate Mitsubishi's ability to get absolutely nothing out of a V6.
They're the they're like they are the Americans of Japan. When you think
that's
about
why they took over Chrysler. You know, Chrysler really rubbed off on Mitsubishi, both in terms of engineering and finance, I think.
Yeah. Two peas in a pod.
Yeah, so it's a 3.8 litre supercharged V6 in, what is it? Like, this is mid-2000s?
Yeah. Like I think mid to late, yeah.
Yeah. Is it dual overhead cam? Let me check. I think so, because it's got no, it is single overhead cam. Okay.
Oh.
Single overhead cam, so we'll give him that. But still, supercharged 3.8 litre V6, mid-2000s, 310 horsepower.
Wow.
That's a bit... I don't know, if you're pushing it through the front wheels, though, you wouldn't want that much more.
You wouldn't want that much more. You also certainly wouldn't want much more than 326 foot-pounds of torque.
Yeah, but surely you could get that much horsepower out of a non-supercharged 3.8 V6. Why does it have to have a blower on it to make that somewhat pitiful amount? I don't know.
But anyway, yeah.
But anyway, we've talked at length about Australia, and in conclusion, it's a bit weird.
Yeah, it's a bit weird, but we like you for it. Keep making weird cars and weird music.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, I don't think they do make the weird cars anymore.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's sort of of their own volition.
Yeah.
You know?
Keep making the weird YouTubers then.
There's citizen efforts going on.
Yeah.
You know? Right. So yes, this is sort of like the main thing we were talking about before, where we said, like, you know, basically just take everything we say as a half-truth on this podcast.
Yes.
Because Nissan and Honda deal fell through. They're not doing it.
Yeah, it did.
I've got this on screen because I did see some whisperings that Nissan was in talk with Foxconn, but nothing is currently, I don't think, confirmed.
My understanding of it was not that Nissan was in talks with Foxconn, but that Renault was in talks with Foxconn to sell them their Nissan stake.
Yes,
which is outside of Nissan's control. You know, that's something that either happens or it doesn't.
But yeah, I think that another thing that really demonstrates is how completely nonplussed with Nissan Renault is, despite
they are
decades of partnership. Renault is clearly out. They don't want to be in this anymore.
No, and clearly, like, do we know exactly why the Honda and Nissan deal fell through? It seems to have been Nissan that turned it down, from what I've been reading.
Yes,
I'm not entirely sure.
From what I can tell, yes, Nissan turned it down, and that's basically because, from what I've been able to ascertain, Honda sort of dropped the veil and said, like, yeah, that merger we were talking about, no. And Honda offered a deal to Nissan that would effectively meant Honda would buy Nissan more or less outright. And result in Nissan becoming a subsidiary of Honda. And that was not something that Nissan were apparently interested in, at least for the money that Honda was offering.
But I don't know how many options Nissan really have.
I was going to say, we're getting some really choosy beggars today.
Yeah.
I don't know. It still baffles me, this whole situation, that it's been allowed to get to this point. But then again, you look at it, you know, the writing has been on the wall for a long time.
It does vindicate, though, what I did say last episode, something that has turned out to be right. No merger is ever a merger. They may brand it as a merger to, like, get the public on board, but no. Like, this was Honda,
especially in this case. You know, there was no doubt about that.
But I just somewhat struggle to see how could be a much. Well, I struggle to see how Nissan have the balls to think that they get to
say no
about this. But also, like, what other companies could be much better than Honda for them? I don't know.
Yeah, because
who's going to give them more money ultimately? Because the shareholders want the most money they can possibly get out of it, and they must feel that whatever Honda offered them was not enough. But it was still a pretty big offer, wasn't it? It was like 50 something billion dollars. Was what they valued Nissan at, which is a premium to their current market value.
Amount of money.
Yeah.
Like that is like most people underestimate how big a billion is.
Yeah.
You know?
That was many billions that Nissan haven't really earned with their recent performance.
Yeah. Like that.
I don't know.
Yeah, because as we said, who else are they gonna go running to? Because they can't.
Well,
run
I guess
they can't run to Renault because Renault is just done.
Yeah, Renault wants to own less of them, not more. It seems.
Yeah. I think we're going to end up with a Chinese-owned Nissan.
Absolutely,
really.
I think. At this rate,
that is very possible.
If Foxconn are interested in Renault's shares, which, just because they entered discussions with it doesn't mean that they necessarily want it. It could have been Renault trying to find someone to buy their shares in Nissan.
Yeah.
Rather than Foxconn showing interest in buying shares in Nissan. But I think
it is interesting though, because Foxconn have been making noises about wanting to make cars for years already. At this point, they were top of the list for being the construction partner for the Apple car, for example, which isn't surprising because they are, of course, a major
already making the
manufacturer of the iPhone. So maybe it makes kind of some sense for Foxconn to want to buy a large existing automaker. If they believe that, they are going to very, very quickly want to ramp up productive capacity for vehicles.
Yeah.
But
one
who
thought
knows?
I've just had is that because for a while weren't Foxconn involved in Lordstown Motors, which was that like...
are those the... No, who am I thinking of? No.
Like the electric pickups being made in the XGN factory.
Yeah, okay, that was who I was
Yeah, they were involved in that, and then all of a sudden they weren't. And I haven't... have we heard that much noise out of Foxconn about trying to make a car post that?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it would be a bold strategy for them to try and get into cars with Nissan's expertise, who have famously been so great at building cars recently.
Well, and also like trying to enter with such, because as much as we're downplaying Nissan and sort of poo-pooing them, they are still fucking huge.
They are massive, yeah.
It just seems like they might end up with a lot more on their plate than they know how to deal with, but I guess that's what they're taking into account when they give their valuation. But I just don't see how any of these options could necessarily be better for either parties, the buyers and Nissan, than Honda. But, I don't know, what do I know?
Yeah, it seems like the only rational reason for Nissan to pump the brakes on the Honda deal and look somewhere else is there must be people high up at Nissan who genuinely believe there is a possibility they can survive without help.
Yeah.
And with all the numbers that we've been seeing and all the messaging from the company itself, that sounds ridiculous. But of course, we don't actually know. Maybe there is a hope there that Nissan won't need a partner. And maybe part of what they didn't like about the Honda deal was that it was a concrete deal very quickly that they needed to make a decision on, and they might be trying to stall for time to see if they can avoid having to sell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which might have been a very rash move to make, because all of a sudden turning down an offer, especially in business worlds like this, it usually means you can't go back and say, hey, actually, we would like this offer.
No, they won't be going back to Honda.
No. Because as soon as you do that, the Honda will sort of go, oh, so now you're even more desperate. We're going to ask for less money now.
Who knows? Well, who knows what their thought process is behind this? But hopefully they have one.
Yeah, either Nissan is at this rate probably going to get bought by a Chinese company, or they might just go bankrupt, and then whoever's interested will buy up the sort of remains.
Yeah.
Well, if they end up in bankruptcy court, I reckon Honda will be jumping up and down because they'll be able to basically name whatever price they want at that point and not have to deal with negotiations.
Who else is going to be competing?
Yeah,
we have some options, but none of them seem particularly keen on Nissan in its current state, let alone bankrupt Nissan.
Well, the only other company that seemed well positioned to potentially wanting to take over Nissan is Renault, and they seem to be making it abundantly clear that they are not interested in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't think of another car company that it makes a great deal of sense for them to be interested in taking over Nissan right now.
Oh well,
good luck. It's not looking good. It's not looking good.
No.
Yeah.
Again, I know we already mentioned it last episode, but the fact that we're saying this about Nissan, is kind of bewildering to me.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, if you look back on everything through a proper, with an economical eye,
you can see this coming sort of really from the late 2000s onwards.
Exactly, but just as an emotional thing, Nissan as a brand have seemed completely
dominant. Really.
Well, exactly. How can they fail? But they can is the answer. And they've let themselves do it. I think maybe they were in the same position. We can keep making these cars the way that we want, and I'm sure our financial situation will turn around eventually, and it just hasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
anyway. But whatever we say, we're wrong anyway. So.
Yes. Exactly.
Well, Nissan's going to make a full recovery and probably be the most profitable car company on the planet within.
Actually, people have already spotted in camo the next generation, or at least the next facelift of the Nissan Sentra. So yeah, they'll start selling hundreds of thousands of those immediately, and of course they'll be completely fine.
Yeah.
Well, they've saved a lot of money actually by basing it on the Renault 12.
Yes.
For this generation.
Yeah.
Except for the Australian one. I don't know what that one's based on.
All right, moving on. This is something that's sort of a little something I noticed. It's not just Nissan. It's not just Stellantis, even though Stellantis are on this as well. Everyone's just going down the shitter right now. Like, it's like, we already mentioned before how, like, how previous other car manufacturers are facing issues at this time. We had VW looking at closing plants in Germany. We had everything going on with Nissan, everything going on with Stellantis. This is an industry-wide problem, and we've already talked about it before. But just some fresh new examples hot off the plate today, or hot off the presses, I should say. We'll start with the one that's sort of the least sort of immediately a problem for the manufacturer in question, Porsche. Porsche have fired both their head of sales and their head of marketing.
Wow.
Okay.
Primarily, the claim was given for slow sales and increasing costs, and
that's just everyone. Like, everyone's facing.
Have you seen
problem.
The economy, man?
Yeah. And
look at a graph.
Yeah.
If you would please consult the
graphs. Everything bad. Things that happen, nothing.
Indeed. And I think that will partially be tied to the Porsche Taycan, which I saw recently. Sales fell for the Porsche Taycan by 49%.
Jesus.
Ooh, wow. That's tough.
I mean, I think there are probably, if you think about it, a few reasons why. A lot of them are going to be salary sacrifice deals, and maybe in those...
The sort of waning popularity of the EV that's been happening for the past few months.
Yeah, and just, different competition and people being a lot more aware of the depreciation that will be hitting not just, not every EV, not just, you could probably kid yourself into thinking the Porsche won't be so bad, but it is. So,
and again, this is Porsche. Porsche, more so than almost any other company for the past 10 years, has been absolutely printing money.
and it's not just the money printing, it's the popularity thing. I mean, I think rivaled almost only by Tesla have Porsche have gone from, obviously people always like Porsches, but they are now, I would say a lot of people who you ask on the street what their dream car would be, it's going to be it would either be a Tesla or a Porsche.
Maybe
I
a
think
Ferrari,
their popularity,
but,
yeah, true. But I think their popularity to like the layman has kind of very much increased over this past decade.
That's undeniably true, yeah.
And yet somehow, but then you think about it, you think, what, they fired, who was it they fired? Their
head of
marketing?
head of sales and head of marketing.
But what are they, you look at it and you think, well, what are they going to do more?
Yeah, well,
I thought
what
they
did
were
they
already
do
smashing
wrong,
out of the park. I thought,
I think marketing has done exceptionally well at least. I mean, maybe sales are down, but
that poor bastard, I feel a bit bad. Yeah. I thought he'd done his job quite well. I mean, with all of their special editions and everything, I thought for the last, especially since 2020, I would say Porsche have been, I would genuinely argue, the most desirable brand in the world apart from Tesla, when it comes not just to like actually people buying models, but people wanting to, people dreaming of them, people, talking about them. And yet apparently it's not enough. I don't know.
It's like capitalism means more growth. You have to keep growing. You have to keep growing all the time. And if you didn't, then that means you did something wrong. It can't
really
possibly
that
be related
surprising?
to any external trends. If, I know this is a universal example. It happens everywhere. But through some family and work connections, we are familiar with some people, like someone who is manages a pizza express, and this particular one wasn't doing that well. They came in, they started managing it, and in 1 year managed to turn things around and managed to increase, I'm not sure if it was profits or revenue, but either way they managed to turn things around by something like 11%, something in that range. Yeah. And regional management immediately went, oh wow, that's brilliant, great job. So 13% next year.
Yeah.
And it's like, what I've done what I can. Like, this place wasn't doing very well. I've turned it around. We're making money. What do you mean you want me to grow it again? What more can I do? And
yeah.
But that's the thing. Capitalism demands this continuous growth, but Porsche kind of reached the cap.
Well, that's the thing. I cannot genuinely imagine how, I mean, I know you're saying about the 49% fall in Taycan sales, but even so, I would still say that the Taycan is the car enthusiast electric car of choice.
It's been around a few years now, and demand for all electric cars has really, really tapered off, quite harshly.
I think there's a Taycan update on the way, isn't there? I believe in the works, or was that the Panamera? I can't remember, but
they did a Panamera one fairly recently, so it would surprise me.
Okay,
if it was
that might be what I'm thinking of. But I just don't get how they're expected to do better than they currently are, really. But as you said, that's the nature of the beast when it comes to continuous growth in these companies.
Yeah. Moving on, Aston Martin have announced that they are laying off 170 of their workers, which makes up roughly 5% of their current workforce. Which, in the grand scheme of things, I guess 5% isn't a huge number.
Yeah.
But it's just, I said, oh, okay, yeah, that's not great. And then I read what that was in response to. That is in response to a pre-tax loss of £284 million this year.
Jesus.
Which increased from the previous year's loss of $220 million. And as a result of that, Aston Martin's current debts roughly stand at about £1 billion.
which is more than the value of the company right now, which is not a good place to be at all. And the scary thing as well is like their overall revenue has decreased. Like not only have their losses widened, their year-on-year revenue change has been a shrinkage. I think they've gone from I think it's like a 1.45 billion pound annual revenue to 1.38, and it's just like I legitimately don't actually know what Aston Martin should be doing right now, because as far as I'm concerned, they're making some really cool cars.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a massive fan of the design language in some elements. Like the big grille isn't my thing, but
everyone's doing big grills. It's not as if it's
exactly
uniquely bad to Aston Martin.
When it comes to the different models they're offering and the engines, and I feel like they tick most of the boxes that it's not like there's one glaring. If they hadn't made the DBX, as much as I don't like the DBX, everyone would be saying, "Well, you should make an SUV," but they do.
They do, and like they sold all of those multi-million-pound velours. Like they're like building out their mid-engined like hypercar thing, and I think they might have pre-sold some of those as well. Like I can't fathom how their revenue has managed to go backwards.
I just don't think there's enough people who want them, I guess.
Well,
like maybe
clearly, yeah,
but I mean, like, there's just the market for Aston Martin buyers now that maybe it's genuinely James Bond. Yeah, I'm thinking like the amount of people who probably bought DBSs because they saw Casino Royale. Maybe that's what they're missing now.
Maybe. But
because even sort of like not to say it's like the sole effect, but even sort of the James Bond films as of recent have sort of lost their luster. James Bond as a brand isn't even as strong as it was 10, 20 years ago.
And now we know what's happening to it.
Yeah, they've saw that. They've let it go to Amazon now. They have full creative
I didn't even
control,
know that. Fucking hell.
Yeah, it's Amazon have full creative control. They fought, but they gave up. So
yeah, there will probably never be another good Bond film.
Yeah.
But like Aston Martin's one of these brands that you could, like, theoretically, you look at the cars they make, you look at the history they have, you look at the fact that they are so active in racing, and that their racing programs are looking genuinely promising, right? Their Formula One and their Le Mans hypercar programs look like they could genuinely be making impacts over the next couple of years, right? Yeah. And you go, well, surely they're a prime contender to be a Ferrari. And Ferrari are doing better than ever. They're incredibly valuable. They're super, super profitable. They're consistently growing. Like, what? Like, are we in such an insular bubble in the UK when it comes to the perception of Aston Martin that we really just cannot see what other people see when it comes to these cars?
My thought is there only sort of room for one Ferrari?
But I feel like,
part of why Ferrari has been so successful, as we've mentioned before, is the fact that the Ferrari brand is so monolithic and just crushing almost in its might. Much like Porsche, people consider Ferrari as an aspirational brand. Not just they make cool cars. As we've said before, like, people will go out and buy Ferrari branded clothing, merch, just because of the brand, even if they're not really into cars.
But they've only built that by making cool cars and winning races.
Yeah.
The thing that you were saying about maybe we're in a bubble in the UK, but then you look at Land Rover and Range Rover, and the fact that their profits, I just had a look, were for 9 months before December last year, 1.6 billion in profit for Land Rover, for JLR.
Yeah.
And yet Aston Martin, who in are kind of going for that same, British chic, I would say, as their kind of, the marketing around them, the way they design their cars, what they're aiming for as a target demographic, compared, is what they have as their cards compared to other brands. And it just falls flat on its face, apparently. And I don't get what they're, as you're saying, I don't get what they're doing wrong, really, because I like them. And sure, there are a lot of people who like Aston Martins in the UK who also like, Jaguar Land Rover vehicles. But does that not, what translates differently to the rest of the world? That means that every country has thousands of Range Rovers in every city, and yet Aston Martins aren't profitable.
Yeah, I don't know either. I genuinely don't. And I continue to hold out hope that Aston will, like, if they're going to be burning money for years, if they can afford to do that, if Lawrence Stroll will keep giving them nice little handouts every quarter to keep them afloat, maybe they'll be able to cultivate a strong enough base of returning customers that maybe they could actually survive on their own in a sustainable way. But it's not looking great, because the best performing bits of Aston Martin financially are completely disconnected from the main company. I mean, it's basically the Formula One team. The Formula One team is a significantly more attractive financial asset than the road car company. To the point where there's rumours that they're like, they're going to be spending €1 billion to get Max Verstappen. That's more than the entirety of Aston Martin Lagonda is worth.
What?
Yeah. How?
$1 billion just for Verstappen?
There's lots of media reports on that recently, and no one knows what the term is. No one knows if it's a real offer that's been made, but it's just one of these things that's floating around the ether at the moment.
Christ. I mean, maybe it's like a sort of passing on of the rot, because, go back a few changes of ownership, and the Aston Martin Formula One team was once the Spiker Formula One team. So, I don't know, maybe it's just sort of the taint has sort of...
it's like, I get, maybe it's like Indiana Jones, and where you like go to try, they've taken all this time to find a successful Formula One team, and in it they've corrupted and poisoned themselves.
Yeah.
It saddens me, because I like Aston Martins.
I love Aston Martins.
And I can't... I mean, once again, people in the comments, if you, whatever country you're from, let us know, and what stops people in your country from buying Aston Martins. Because, I mean, I don't think it's... I'm not looking at figures here, but I don't think it's a bold statement to say that the UK probably buys... is the most enthusiastic buyer of Astons. No shit.
I'd say that's probably true, yeah.
But what is... So
even
I don't think...
they're not, wildly popular here.
They're not really popular.
I mean, and that's because they're very expensive. You don't see many brand new Ferraris either. But I'd say you see them about as often as you'd see a Ferrari maybe here.
I certainly see more Astons than I see even McLarens or Maseratis.
Oh, yeah.
I think personally, from people that I've talked to, I think there's a kind of... when it comes to Astons and McLarens, if you are like an entrepreneur, there's a certain image that you can kind of uphold about your faith in the UK by driving a luxury, by having your supercar be a British car. And so I think a lot of people buy them because of that. They want their first supercar, but they also like the idea of supporting another fellow, maybe failing British brand. But what in other countries that don't have that loyalty, what is happening? Like, what stops people from walking into the Aston Martin dealership versus the Ferrari dealership?
It might be because if they're trying to trade off that British chic, that has lost a lot of its luster over the past decade.
But then it still works for JLR. I say JLR for Land Rover, Range Rover specifically.
Yeah,
we'll see if it works for Jaguar. It may well, but
it baffles me how this is not like, what's the difference between our... Because it's not like Range Rovers have a reputation for reliability that Aston Martins don't, is it?
Aston
Martin's
Martin's
probably
probably
more
got a better...
reliable because they've got Mercedes
exactly.
engines.
So,
and
where's it going wrong?
I definitely have an Aston over a McLaren for both reliability and depreciation reasons.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And personal reasons, but yeah. But and the new Aston, is it? Oh God, which I've forgotten now. What's the name of the really good-looking new one that they came out with?
The new Vanquish.
The new Vanquish. I adore that thing, and I spent a good hour and a half specking it out. And genuinely, if I won the lottery tomorrow, the one brand new car I would buy is I walk down to the Aston Martin dealer and slap my piece of paper on the table and say, "Have me this," and it would be my exclusively spec'd. Because it's just a gorgeous car, and the options
velour
that they
as well.
let you select, and the engine, and oh man, but what's stopping other people? What is stopping the people who actually have the money?
The Valor looked great. The Valiant was the Valiant a one-off? Or at least very low.
I'm not sure. Google these, man. I do not remember all of these V's.
Yes, but the Valor looked fucking amazing. The Valiant looked great as well.
I love that kind of styling, like design language that they've gone for with the Valor and the Valiant. I think
the grills on the DB12 and the Vanquish are a little bit big, but I can get over that. I didn't really like the DB12. I didn't really like the floating roof thing with the DB12. But the Vanquish looks fantastic. Yeah, whenever I was sort of bored of an afternoon and specking one of them out, I'd always get like the coloured pillars. On them.
I think it makes it look a lot better. But even so, Aston don't make an ugly car. Well,
DBX notwithstanding.
Yeah, they know how to make a good-looking vehicle, and they know how. My experience from seeing, when you see them in a car park, they know how to make them special and have an aura about them.
They do have presence. It's true.
Yeah, but what don't they know how to do that sells them? It does genuinely make me sad, because I love Astons and I would love to see them keep making cars, but they can't keep doing this forever. There's going to be something will have to change. You can't lose. How much was it? 200 and something billion, did you say?
284 million
you can't lose £250 million or dollars every year and just keep making cars. No matter how good your F1 team is, that doesn't change anything.
Well, what should they do though? Because they already make the SUV, they already make like the top line thing, they already have the mid-range thing, they've already got the little Vantage.
If you'd asked me 2 years ago, I would have said, "Oh, well, they need something electric." But I think, now that doesn't.
I think the Vantage.
Well, they are doing that. They're going to be doing that before the end of the decade.
But it's too little, too late. Really. Well, at the moment, at least, it's too.
Even the Vantage, I think, is a little bit too expensive for what it is. That's the one thing.
How much is a new Vantage? I don't think they're like outrageous.
I think they're Porsche price. But they need to a little bit more than Porsche price maybe. But most people, if they have that money, as we've just discussed, are going to buy a Porsche. That's the one thing I can think of. That is the one thing I can think.
How much is a new Aston Martin Vantage? Just give me a number, please. Oh, that's more expensive than I thought.
How much?
165 grand.
Yeah.
Is that's kind of if it's 115, 120, it's like
yeah, because again right, that's 911 price,
Yeah. But it's a great looking car, the new one with the facelift. The one that had like that horrible I don't know how to describe it. It had a terrible overbite for a few years.
Yeah, it didn't look great, but yeah, they had with the facelift, it looks really good.
Yeah,
but I guess it's more powerful than your stock 911. quite a bit,
Well,
quite a bit more powerful than your stock 911. But even still, like, I guess it's more so going after Ferrari Roma, really, with the amount of power that it has and the price. But you know,
but the thing that I get when I look at a new Aston and think about specking and buying, if I had the money, I don't get that at all about Ferrari. I just don't. No, some of the new ones are
I'm the same as
pretty,
you. Yeah.
but I wouldn't want to actually own one. If I could have one plonked on my driveway, one new supercar, it would be an Aston.
Absolutely, yes. I'm 100% in agreement with you, because I went on that whole bit last episode when I was talking about how I don't really think Ferrari is cool anymore because of how commercialized the brand has become. And the fact that the brand hasn't become so commercialized is what attracts me to Aston Martin over Porsche and Ferrari. But maybe it's because of that exact non-commercialization that Porsche and Ferrari have done so very well, and Aston Martin is losing money hand over fist.
Well, yeah. Once again, people in the comments, if you have any ideas as to what your country thinks about Aston Martins,
why
and
you're
why you wouldn't
wrong,
buy them,
why you personally are killing Aston Martin,
please comment down below so I can write a hate comment in response. Thank you.
And finally, just to top things off, our good old broke friend Maserati, Stellantis have written off a 1.2 billion investment in Maserati. I can't remember whether it was euros or dollars, but either way.
Well, hopefully it yields something.
No, they've written off that investment. Like,
so they've already decided it's yielded nothing. So when did they, like,
new Maserati models in limbo after 1.2 billion pound investment? Okay, so it's worse. Wow. Written off. Decision for Stellantis, which also owns Baustralia or whatever. Referenced the cancellation of certain projects prior to launch.
That's always a good sign.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah. So that electric quattroporte.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not looking good.
If I was working for Aston right now, I would be saying the phrase, could be worse.
Yeah.
And in fact, it could be potentially even worse because of what's on our next slide. Boom! Segway, baby!
Wow, that was smooth.
We are a car podcast, but I'm going to loophole that. The Expo. So, cars. Yeah.
I always thought it was the crossbow.
I always thought it was the crossbow as well, but it doesn't really matter.
But that's not what it looks like, so I'm not calling it that.
True.
Yeah, so KTM, we were thinking about talking about this last episode, I believe. But since then, more information has come out, and also I watched the Fortnite video, which sort of unveiled sort of more to me the scale of what's going on. If you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of it, watch that video. The long and short of it is that KTM, massive motorcycle manufacturer based in Austria, are also in the shit.
Yeah.
Well, there's news from about you may have seen this 4 days ago. They have avoided bankruptcy.
They have avoided bankruptcy, that's true, at least for the time being.
They are undergoing a massive restructuring plan that creditors believe is likely enough to succeed that they are willing to stay any form of bankruptcy proceeding. They didn't. It's not even a bankruptcy restructuring. It's a restructure. It's a restructuring pre-bankruptcy.
Yes.
In order to avoid it.
Yeah. So to go ahead with that, 70% of KTM's existing debt was agreed with creditors to be voided, basically.
That's insane.
Which is considering. Do you Do you want to know how much the debt was?
Oh, a few quid maybe.
It was 2.3 billion euros.
Oh
Bloody
my
Nora.
god.
I wish I could smooth talk my way out of accidentally being 2.3 billion euros in debt.
2.3 billion.
I could save Aston Martin with
2.3
that.
billion euros in debt. They managed to.
That's 2.3 Max Verstappen's. That's
That's it's 2.3
How many
Aston.
do-do-do-dos
It's
is
2.3
that?
Aston Martins is what it is as well.
That's crazy.
What kind of lawyers do they have that got them out of that situation?
Okay, I'm not sure even if that debt has been completely voided. And again, it's not all of it. They still have to pay 30% of it.
Yeah.
Or if it's they only have to pay 30% of it by the deadline, they should have paid all of it.
Okay.
but-
Well, that'd make it a lot easier.
But either way, by the end of the year, they have to pay 30% of 2.3 billion.
Right.
That's still a rather
That is a lot
substantial
of money.
amount of money.
That
What's
is a
that? The
substantial amount of
700
money
million
when-
euros?
When, thanks to the Fortnite video, I learned that KTM currently has about a year's worth of production of motorcycles in stock that they can't sell.
Oh, God.
And that's
How,
can't sell.
why did they not slow down production?
That is can't sell in more ways than one. Because not
What,
only
like
are they struggling to sell
non-compliant?
numbers, they also can't sell a lot of them in Europe because they've been sitting on the court for so long, they're no longer compliant with emissions regulations.
Oh, yeah, I was thinking that might be an issue.
Well, you can get around that by just selling them for 20% less as quote unquote used, though, couldn't you?
I don't know about the regulations about that.
Well, yeah, but doesn't that depend if they've already been pre-registered or not? If they've not been registered, then they
Yeah, if
wouldn't
they've
be
not been
able to.
registered. Yeah, you might be right.
I don't know, but that's. I mean, again, I'm not much of a bike person. I don't understand, but this seems like a. Well, it seems like a similar situation we're seeing in a lot of performance car manufacturers.
Exactly.
Which is,
So KTM, about 20 years ago, weren't that big. They were making about 6,000 bikes a year, I think. Up until recently, they were making about 250,000 bikes a year.
Wow.
KTM grew a lot very quickly. And I think we're seeing the symptoms of that.
Yeah. How can you build up a stock of a year's worth of sales and at no point in that time go, we're making these faster than we're selling them. Should we slow down a bit?
Yeah, utterly bizarre.
That's mind-boggling.
Yeah, so just to show how big KTM are, I mean, obviously KTM bikes, they make a lot of. They also own MV Agusta, they own Husqvarna, they own Gas, which are all very, very big motorbike companies. Like, especially MV Agusta is a name that was immediately recognizable to me as a non-motorcycle person.
Yes,
You know. The others, not so much. Like Husqvarna and Gas, I wasn't really familiar with at all, but
yeah, no clue.
But a lot of it seems to be sort of a lot of KTM, Husqvarna, and Gas dirt bikes are basically the same. There's very little reason, like they're sort of trying to VW Skoda Seat situation with that, but even less effort by the looks of things. So that kind of helped. The primary thing that it looks like hasn't helped is the fact that they decided to make their camshafts and heads out of papier-mâché and bits of nails that were on the floor.
The rover technique, I believe they call that.
Yes. So yeah, it's looking pretty rough for KTM. There are whisperings that BMW might buy or be interested in taking a stake in the company. BMW make bikes.
I did hear that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, just as a reminder.
Yes.
Apparently, I've never cared, but apparently they do.
BMW make bikes of their own, and KTM's extensive engineering expertise would be a big boon for that, because, you know, exploding camshafts aside, KTMs are known for basically being some of the best bikes you can buy in their respective categories for the money. Like, in terms of performance and rideability and all of that, they are very, very popular. But yeah, the restructuring plan they're currently going through is a shade over 500 million. But where is that 2.3 billion in debt going, man? I don't understand.
Well, they're sweeping it under the fridge, and then they're going to make money somehow. I don't know. We need to create like a bankruptcy imminent corner that we can like add big brands to.
At this time, it's half the automotive industry.
Yeah, actually,
if they make something with an engine in it, they're in the corner, I think, right now.
Oh. But anyway, moving on to a car.
Wow, that's a
emphasis on car. It's certainly not plural.
Yeah. So, you know, a few episodes back when we absolutely lost our minds that the DS9 had sold 3 cars in the UK in the previous 9 months?
God's own, yeah.
Yep. Do you want to know how many Lexus LSs have been sold in the UK in the previous 12 months?
Is it 14,278?
No.
Close, but not quite. Not quite.
There's a hint on screen.
Is it 3?
It's 3.
Wow.
It's so bad.
The fact that less potentially, because I don't know if we like looked into if any more DS9s were sold in the UK post our sort of little escapade.
Put money on it.
But there is a potential that more DS9s were sold in the UK than Lexus LSs.
Which is kind of painful, because I've always liked the LS.
Yeah.
Wasn't the LS at least decently popular when it first launched in the UK? Still nowhere.
I mean, you still see them sometimes.
Lexus,
because they survive well.
Yeah, because Lexuses have never been as popular in Europe as they have been in the US by any stretch of the imagination. But still, they've been around. You don't not see them. I see plenty of the SUVs like the UX and the RX.
Yeah.
You see
but
quite a few
I
of those.
always thought that like the LS always had like a solid, reliable customer base that was like
small but reliable following.
Yeah, like retired, lots of money, and wants something, you know, not too flashy and that just works. And I thought that was still the case, but apparently not.
Do you know how many of these they've sold in the UK since the beginning of 2020? So for the decade so far.
Yeah.
At
5
least
years.
3?
Well, yes, at least 3. Are we even in 3 digits?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Well, no, actually, that's.
Oh, we're not. Okay. Oh my god.
Sorry, I misread the number. It's significantly worse than I.
Is it 65 or something? I don't know.
39.
Oh my god. 39.
It's so over for saloons. It's actually so over.
They've sold 39 of them in 5 years.
That's really depressing.
That's shocking. That's less than 8 a year. Why were they
That
even
saddens
bothering?
I don't know.
Yeah. You know what's really funny is Toyota, as part of the announcement that they were going to stop selling the LS in the UK, they decided to try and blame regulatory changes.
Oh really? Oh really? Now?
Yeah, that's why you're not going to sell the 3 of these that you were going to sell next year. Is because of slight change in regulations. That makes complete sense.
I mean, yeah, I can't wrap my head around that, really. Why, you know, I can understand if it was small numbers. It's never been particularly huge numbers, but 39?
Yeah, I know. It's one of those strange ones. It really does Like, I feel like I've seen these on the road.
Yeah, but maybe not.
But I must not have done. I must have seen an IS and mistaken it.
Ooh, you will never remember seeing the LS.
Gaslighting ourselves into thinking that these are more popular than they are.
You have one. It's outside.
Oh,
what do you
crazy. The three, because I remember buying what you I think you posted
we were
you
together
bought
at the
one.
dealership.
And Fred,
How do you not remember?
you bought one. You're like, that's the 3.
Yeah.
Ah.
We should go to a Lexus dealer and see if we could just have one.
Yeah.
If we just say like, come on, guys.
Well, if they
have another.
I'd be shocked if a Lexus dealer in the UK even had one of these.
True. I mean, maybe it's a case of like, in current year, like it has terrible finance options or something for it.
Maybe.
Like that's the
I don't.
the only
It
thing I'm
would be the
leaning
same
towards.
as. I mean, they're kind of expensive, aren't they? I mean, the question does have to be: how many people in the UK who can afford to spend $100,000 on a luxury saloon are going to be spending it on a Lexus instead of a Mercedes or?
That's
an
the thing.
Audi
I think
or a
it
BMW,
is a particularly sort of British psychosis at the moment. That if it's not an Audi, BMW, or Mercedes, it's trash.
But it is also the case that I do think the
Or a Range
LS
Rover.
was a bit expensive for what it is.
But I mean, that's kind of always the point of Lexus, though, is that it's understated luxury. Maybe they lost.
Even if you want a Lexus, though, you can spend less than what you'd spend on an LS and get an LC 500.
Oh god,
And the LC 500.
500.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous vehicle.
That is fighting the Aston Martin in my
that's
brain.
that. I'm
the
surprised
car
I
that
didn't
I'd
come up.
spawn
The
on
LC
driveway.
500 is up there as like a modern car I'd actually want. It's
In
gorgeous.
a decade, I'm gonna have one. When they're like, when the depreciation has taken most of it off, but they've also not depreciated enough that they're owned by people who.
I'm not sure they're ever going to depreciate that much. They really not. They don't sell many of them. I think
Not to the same extent. Not to the same extent, but I think with the LC 500, we'll see the LFA effect where they just don't depreciate.
I don't know. I don't see. I think they didn't sell many of them because the market isn't that much. I don't think. Because then it's not like they were a specific low production car. People just didn't buy them. I wouldn't. I would say this is going to be the same as like as any other high performance or luxury Japanese sports car. It won't.
What really
go to
baffles
the
me about the LC 500, it's a bit of a tangent, but what really baffles me about the LC 500 market is that there isn't a bigger gap between the 3.5 litre hybrid and the 5 litre V8 price.
Yeah, they're almost the same price.
They're
Like, what are we
almost
doing
exactly
here?
the same.
How many of the hybrid V6s are they selling? It can't be many.
It's more. They're selling more of those than there are V8s.
Wait, really?
I really there's going to be a divergence, a quite dramatic divergence in price between those two, and I don't know whether or not it's going to be that the hybrids lose value faster or the V8s start to go up in value once they leave production. But there's going to be a divergence that happens.
Jesus,
there,
that's
undoubtedly.
a lot of money.
But I just had a thought, maybe because like Lexus, where it was popular in the UK, it was popular for being understated luxury that was still definitively modern. Like we've always had our understated luxury with sort of maybe not understated, but Jaguar has sort of always been the sort of alternative to the German Vorsprung durch Technik luxury.
Yeah.
Maybe Lexus has lost that market of understated luxury because look at the front of the LS. I've been saying understated this entire time, and then I just looked at the front grille.
But to be fair, over here it'd have a plate on it.
Yeah.
That helps a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I can't work out. There's nothing that makes me say yes. That's definitely why the LS sold 3.
It does look a lot like a Camry, doesn't it?
But does that matter over here?
Because we don't really see many
get the
Camrys, if any.
We don't see many Camrys, though. That's true.
Although they are mostly mini cabs.
Maybe.
It does also look a little bit like an Infiniti.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
And they also sold quite remarkably poorly.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe my thought is, one thought I just had, the kind of person who would buy a new Lexus in the UK back in the 90s or mid-2000s is now the kind of person who buys a second-hand Lexus.
Maybe, or an electric car.
I think the kind of person who buys a brand new Lexus in the 90s or early 2000s is the kind of person who's dead.
Yeah,
That's also an excellent point.
I would just
Kind
like
of
to
person
say
who currently enjoys dark environments 6 feet underground.
Yeah.
Or being on the mantelpiece. I would just like to say, Mr. President, an under £50,000 LC has hit the Auto Trader.
That's not. They were like high 30s a few months ago.
I assume that would be the V6
V8,
version.
I mean.
Maybe this 50 grand one is a V8.
I'm talking about the V8s here.
Okay.
Oh, fair enough. I don't know. I feel like I feel
maybe
like
they
I've
have
seen
gone,
those for less than 50. I think they.
But I think when they get into the 30s, mid 30s, have one, get one.
Yeah, I'm watching
Yeah,
Alpine
that
A110s as well. Once they slip
Yeah.
into the high 20s, it's going to be like, that's interesting.
So if you'd like to donate to our cars, please do.
Yes. Yes.
Just here's my address. Send me money.
Don't break in. Well, do break in
Yeah.
and leave a big pile of money and then leave.
Yeah, be like Santa.
Yeah, that would be
Yes.
great.
Right. Lightning round. Well, at least
Yeah.
I say the
Sure.
lightning round. It's consistently been one of the longer segments in the videos that we've done. But
I can see many of these about which I have almost nothing to say, so we should.
yes,
we should be all right.
So top left, there's a new Morgan.
Wow.
Wow. Where is it?
Why did they even fucking bother with the camo paint? What are they trying to do? What are you hiding?
It's birchwood. That's the natural.
Oh, interesting.
Oh.
I mean, yeah, it's a new Morgan. New. In
I
inverted
wonder what it's
commas.
going to look like when they put it in a normal colour.
Yeah.
Who
I
knows?
do still really like Morgans though, and I think the idea that they do them now with BMW 6-cylinders is really quite cool.
Yeah, they've been doing that for a little while, I think.
Yeah.
Oh no, because they moved over to BMW V8s a while back.
I mean, the stuff like the Aeromax in the 2000s with the V8, awesome. But as an actual compromise for still wanting the old Morgan shape and like you could take the roof off and everything, but having it decent and livable. I think the BMW Straight 6 and reliable as well to an extent is a great compromise. I mean, there's a reason why the BMW Straight 6 is used in the Grenadier as well. Because it's a good engine for a low volume manufacturer who doesn't want to make their own to put into something like this that covers all bases. I like it, but do they really need to camouflage it?
Yeah, yes.
I wonder what it looks like.
Even though Morgan sort of historically have never really used straight sixes, it's always either been like a Triumph 4-cylinder or the Rover V8 really has historically been what's used. Somehow in my head, like the straight six fits the character of a Morgan.
I think so as well.
Like it's because the straight six I just see as a sort of very venerable and classy engine layout.
Yeah,
and there's venerable is what I think is the adjective Morgan will probably use to describe their choice to stick with tradition.
Yes.
So I think it fits.
Yeah, I like it.
I believe because this is the replacement for the Plus 6 that they're making. I believe it's going to be called the Morgan Super Sport. But
Interesting.
My Morgan knowledge is so non-existent. Honestly, it's just.
I mean, to be fair, there's not that much to know because very little has changed.
I just mean like when it comes to like the naming schemes, I just hear like there's a new Morgan. It's called this. Okay, I wouldn't be able to repeat that a day later.
There's a new Morgan. Is it going to have the big engine or the small engine?
Yeah,
That's all you need to know.
Although I was just thinking, can you imagine one of those with the GR Yaris engine as like the smaller one? I think that
in like the Morgan. I think the Morgan three-wheeler with the GR Yaris
Oh,
engine.
that's death. You're going to die.
Yeah, that's a rocket. That is soaring past the Hyundai venue. That is
Fatalities per mile.
straight to the top.
Yeah.
But even like one of those, because they're quite light still. I think with a GR Yaris engine and a manual, that would be a fun thing to have. As like as a sort of, well, as a rival for like the Cyberster, as we were talking about before we started filming, as like a pointless rich person's roadster. I'd like that. I guess that's what this does anyway. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah. Moving on, it's sort of, I don't know if it's been 100% confirmed, but it's on everyone's, everyone knows it's going to happen. The last of the petrol Alpine A110s are sort of,
I've seen conflicting
it's been out for
information
8
on
years. It's not really that surprising. Pardon, sorry?
I feel like I've seen conflicting information on this, because I know Alpine said a while ago that they were going to like stop production of the petrol A110, but then I'm going to fact check myself on this. I'm relatively sure somebody else came out and said, no, we're not going to do that until 2028.
Oh, wow.
Let me
I'm
check.
not sure.
That would put it in production for not over, but like pretty much exactly 11 years.
Yeah.
Because I was under the impression that it was also going away, because I have a friend who's been very much interested in one on like a new one for a number of years, and he's now finally going to look at one at a dealership. Because he was suspecting that he might not have much longer to choose a spec if he wants a new petrol.
Oh yes, okay. It's going to be next year that it goes out of production.
Right. Okay. Which
My bad.
does kind of make sense to me, because it is a fairly old car at this point. Started production in 2017.
Yeah,
it's a deceptively old vehicle,
But it's aged gracefully.
it has.
It still
looks
gracefully,
fantastic.
but it still looks good. It's still, I would say, up to date. I mean, I haven't seen the inside of one of those, but then again, do you really care about the infotainment?
They weren't
in the
super
Alpine?
advanced when they were new. They weren't like.
But that's the way to do
Pumped
it.
full of toys, exactly.
The way without. I try not to talk about, but with my MX-5, the fact that the screen was, pretty basic, not even a touch screen when it was new, might have been annoying. But now, 10 years, well, no, not 10 years, you fucking moron. 6 years later, it's still just as smooth. It has Android Auto. I'm not crashing into 7 pedestrians while trying to change a track.
Yeah.
I think
It's the way to do it.
Especially in a sports car, the way to do it is less is more. God, can you imagine how much you want to, like, if you're in the middle of like the Stelvio Pass in your Alpine and you have to try and swipe up to adjust the heat or the volume on your touchscreen, I'd just drive straight off the edge. Like, but yeah, it's sad to see it go. But I think it's lived a good life, and it's going gracefully into the night.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Unlike our next contestant.
Yeah.
Yes. Because the Nissan GTR is also finishing production. They stopped taking orders in the US in summer, I think. Maybe a little bit later, but they have now also stopped taking orders in Japan as well.
I'm going to be honest.
GTR.
I had assumed
dead.
they'd done that years ago.
Me too. Yeah.
Nope.
Well, I thought the midnight purple and the whatever the kind of bronzy color is they did were like the final editions, but then I forgot that they gave it this extra, like, it's got this facelift, so I guess they were eking more life out of it. But
it never was a pretty car, was it?
No,
and it feels like it's sort of been kept on life support. If it went out, maybe after 10 years, like the or sort of a similar time span to the Alpine, and then been replaced with something, it would have had a very good life. But it's just been, it's like it's been sort of fed steroids and sort of whatever weird chemical concoction they gave to Trump when he got COVID,
Because it hasn't even really been updated at all. It's just been kind of given a drip to keep going. I mean,
if it had lived the same length of life as the Alpine A110 will have by the time it goes out of production next year, the Nissan GT-R R35 would have been out of production for what, like 8 years by now?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, about that, yeah, something like that.
When did it go into production? 2006 or 7?
It's now
7, I think.
17, 18 years old.
I mean,
this
it's
car.
meant, but it's so like there's no reason I think you buy one over there. It was impressive for its time, but it's almost like that has become less impressive by the fact that they've kept building it. It's not managed to, because it can never stay as the relevancy in your mind when you think of the GTR is not going to be how impressive it was when it came out. It's the fact that they kept trying to make it for so long. I mean, I think if they'd given it the facelift that they gave it in 2016, I think if they'd done that like a year earlier and then canned it in 2018, say, it had 10 years, that would have been a good life, maybe a bit long, but they would have got a lot out of it. But now it's just kind of been dragged into the 2020s, and it's almost sad to watch. And you know what this makes me cross about? This bastard thing got to live till now. The NSX was killed years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, again,
it's almost like the NSX was made by a car company that knew what they were doing.
Indeed, but I saw a new NSX today. That could fool me for being a brand new car. Now, even now, I think I would if I walked into a dealer and saw that, I would. I mean, it did. My jaw did drop, and I think it's such a shame it didn't do that well in terms of sales, because it was such a gorgeous car, and technologically advanced for its time, so that it could have kept going for longer. I think, you know, it had a hybrid. They could have updated the batteries maybe, and while the GTR is just the same V6 Nissan have been making for however many decades now.
Yeah, forever. Yeah.
Oh man, Nissan, you're so cooked. But I guess they're kind of finally pulling the plug. Oh. It's just, it's weird to me because my association with the Nissan GTR is like 2010 to 2011, 2012. That was
exactly.
I grew up watching the episode of Top Gear where they race a bullet train.
Yeah. And I remember, it being, whichever video game had the GTR as a new car, it was amazing. It was the most interesting car in the car list in some ways. And it just
wasn't it like the car on the cover of Gran Turismo 5?
Yeah, I think it was. I was just going to say, like Gran Turismo 5 is. I very distinctly remember that car being in the game. Like that's a game
and Need for Speed Pro Street
ago
as well. I just had to double check, but yeah, it was the cover car for Pro Street. It was so when it came out, it was so advanced, and it was an amazing vehicle. But I feel bad for it holding it against it because it's not the car's fault, but the fact that it has been forced to keep going until now just cheapens the impressiveness,
the legacy.
Yeah, well, the legacy.
Like
that's
what
the word.
Was once.
Oh man, I just die.
Well, it is.
Dead.
Yeah, well,
yay!
Yeah. It's like I mean, I know it's another way of saying what we've already been saying, but it's like, there's a reason that people like Jimi Hendrix and Kurt Cobain are held sort of in such high regard.
Yeah.
And it's because they died before they could become fat.
Yeah, before they became
and
Elvis,
wrinkly. Yeah.
And I mean, maybe we should have seen this as the writing on the wall for Nissan in general. The fact that in 2006, 7, 8, they were making this world-beating supercar, and since then they haven't done anything except keep making it. Maybe that should have been the the predictor of their financial status today. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I described it when I was telling my friends the other day that Nissan was going, because they hadn't been keeping up with news. They're not a massive car person. And I was telling them about this, and they asked me why it had happened. The only way I could put it in that moment was just Nissan got lazy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they just got lazy.
True.
And the GTR is like symptom, maybe not symptom number one in terms of like it's contributed the most to their downfall, but it is such a the most glaring example of that.
Well, a Halo car serves as a Halo car, and that goes in both directions. It can set a positive course and like really, really invigorate the feeling towards your brand. But equally, if your Halo car is fucking 18 years old and hasn't been updated in that long, like, you're advertising how little you care about innovating your own products.
Yeah. It can be, impressive, or it can be the cross that you are kind of.
If the best thing, if you're saying the best thing that we can make is this 18-year-old car, it's not really going to instill much confidence in people. That's not fair, because there's the Z as well, but
that's also that's
also
much
really
better.
old.
Yeah.
Like, oh god.
That's just if they made
Nissan just
the GT or something, and it was just a different body on the GTR. I don't know.
Moving on.
Yeah. So I'm sure both of you will be able to recognise that is an AC Cobra.
Yeah.
Yes. Why is it Swedish?
Yeah.
Well, because the current firm of many over the decades that has attempted to start making sort of reissue Cobras, I guess you could call them.
There's millions of
they
them,
are
isn't there?
currently making them in the UK, and you can buy them in the UK and anywhere else in the world, I'm sure. But they're currently making them in the UK. But they wanted to up production, and they have partnered with an engineering firm that is currently based in Trollhättan.
Ah.
Huh.
And I'm sure both of you know what other famous car maker was previously based in Trollhättan.
Yep. Fallen Soldier.
Indeed.
Yeah. It's that factory.
Oh.
AC
cool.
Cobras, if this deal does go through, and because vaporware like this happens all the
Yeah.
time when they say they're going to do something and then they don't. But if this deal goes through, then AC Cobras will be built in the former Saab factory. And I just think that's really funny.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Something poetic could be said about that, I'm sure, but
Isn't there loads of companies that make AC Cobras? Because it's like effectively public domain design at this point.
yeah.
Yes, but this is the one that's making it under the AC name.
Oh, okay. These are actually badged as
So
AC.
this is an
Okay.
actual ACTM Cobra TM.
I see. Okay. Cool. Nice. Presumably it's not going to be that different to the ones already being made. They're just going to be made in Sweden instead.
I don't know whether they're going to continue making them in both factories, which would be a really bizarre situation. But yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Why not?
Good luck, guys.
Nice.
In the middle here, we have the spy shot of the upcoming Mercedes CLE 63 AMG.
Is this the story about them bringing back the V8?
Yeah, they've brought back the V8.
Yay.
Yeah,
which
I still don't really like them.
No.
No, I still don't really like them, and like, I'm not someone who's sort of like a massive sort of it's got to be a V8 or whatever.
Yeah.
If they change this to a V6, I wouldn't have really cared. It's the one thing that's like that does make me a little bit excited about this is the fact that they're abandoning the previous C series AMG setup that was like a straight 4 that was boosted with every means necessary above like every inch of its life, and I just don't like it. It's too much. Like it was like a 2-point-something liter straight 4 supercharged up to like 400 horsepower, which is just absurd.
Yeah.
And then with a plug-in hybrid system that makes up the extra 200 up to like 600 horsepower.
It was
like
an
that.
awful setup, and of course it's good that they've gone back to the V8, but it's a fundamentally hideous and uninteresting vehicle, regardless of the engine that they've
Of what
put
engine's in it, yeah.
Because like if you want a V8 powered Mercedes with 2 doors, get the AMG GT. The price difference is negligible.
Or just to continue repping what we were doing before, if you want a 2-door car with a Mercedes V8 twin turbocharged engine in it, get the Aston Martin.
Please buy the Aston Martin.
We are on our knees. Our country is running out of cultural exports. Please.
Oh God! I mean, yeah,
on the note of running out of cultural exports, MG.
Yes.
God.
Sorry, you were going to say something about the Mercedes.
I was just going to say, I'm not like, I'm also one of those people, I'm not going to pretend as if I'm some like, oh, we got to save the V8s and everything, because, you know, the writing is somewhat on the wall, but I just, much like you, I'm sure, just do not have any faith in a 2-litre 4-cylinder boosted to that much power having any more longevity than about the length of the PCP deal. I just can't imagine that that's going to work long term.
It's horrible, but it gave me a little bit of faith actually when they had those tiny little engines boosted up to so much power. It gave me some faith that it's only going to be 5 or 6 years before I don't have to look at another one again, and that's no longer true.
But yes, MG.
They'll get you yet. They'll get you yet. But yes, the reason why I put the MG3 on here is because they've made the most recent version of it available with a pure petrol engine. No hybrid assistance, it's just petrol.
Wow.
And anti-woke.
It's yeah, sure. Yeah.
MG's getting rid of DEI.
Thank you, based China, for being anti-woke.
Proper MGs. Just how we like them.
Proper MG with a 1.2 litre engine in it.
Yeah. But the reason I'm putting this on is because the base version of that pure petrol version is under £17,000.
I thought you were going to say under 17 horsepower. I was like,
well, no, not quite.
That makes sense.
We're not quite at that level. I think I can't remember how much power it had, but like this,
almost
it's
none.
a five-door hatchback in today's economy for under £17,000. I know it's because it's we've already talked before about how it's kind of sketchy how cheap labor is in China.
Yeah. You can get like
regulations.
How much is the new fully electric R5? That's a 5-door hatchback, and it's like what 2023, I think, for a brand new fully electric car that's going to have.
I thought it was a little bit more than that.
Going to have some equipment,
but
well, it might be loss leading at first. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it does depress me to think about how, the old Sanderos...
£22,240, the base model R5
really?
starts at. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's a brand new, fully electric car that isn't...
Is the base one a 5-door? Or is it a 3-door?
They're all 5 doors.
Are they all?
Yeah, the Renault 5s.
Yeah. I thought that they would do like...
It's a 5-door.
Wow, okay, wow. I mean... We've bigged up Renault before for maybe not being so apparently in the shitter and making cheap electric cars, but like that's actually real. They're actually doing it. God damn.
You can actually buy one. Yeah.
I mean, I assume
bugger off, MG.
We'll probably talk about this more once people start actually getting Renault 5s and stuff. But it is a car that I really like. And
I like it too.
I think
I like it a hell of a lot more than the
park.
MG3, even if the MG3 is
but
petrol.
I am still happy the fact that we can get like 17 grand in today's money, depressingly so, is decent for a new car, and it's basic. I mean, this is. I can't find much fault with it, even if I don't particularly like it.
I'm not convinced 17 grand is actually that good of a deal, because how much is an equivalent like Dacia Sandero?
I was about to say. Let me check. Let me check for the Dacia website. Hang on. Yeah, they're starting cheaper. Sandero start cheaper. Go.
So, MG are they're charlatans.
Yeah,
go away.
I don't know why you can't see, but I'm waving the V fuck off
Yeah. You managed to gaslight me into thinking 17 grand for a new car was cheap.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I gaslighted myself into thinking that was good.
Yeah. Well, you could have that, or you can have an MX-5, and depending on which one you get, a good chunk of change. And
so just to like get this straight in my head, MG are saying like they MG have made some kind of fanfare about this idea that you can spend more money than any of the you can spend more money than other cars in its class to get one that has less features.
Maybe it's reverse psychology.
Maybe.
Is it bigger than a Sandero?
No.
Is that
surely not.
I'm
Look at
missing?
it.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's deceptive. I'm trying to work out. Like, there has to be something. You know, there has to be something I'm missing. This can't be that bad. It's smaller. Fuck.
Right. Well,
it's smaller than a Sandero.
Good
what
news.
What are we doing here?
Just buy the Dacia Sandero.
Thank you, based Romania.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Romania numero uno.
So, fine. Yes, some actual images of the Jaguar concept car in testing have also sort of been pretty widely publicized now, and at least the shape appears to be pretty in line with the prototype.
It's
hang on, no.
It's got some padding and stuff on it. And
Yeah.
Hang on. No, I need to. I've just noticed something. Don't tell me this is what I think it is.
No, if that's an autocar render, we have to shoot ourselves.
It's an autocar render. I've been fucking done again.
It's an autocar photograph. It's not an autocar render.
Oh, right. They just put them watermark on it.
Yeah, it's like.
Okay. I thought I'd been.
No, it's thankfully
yet again.
not.
Right.
It is
way,
usually
yes.
the universal sign that you cannot trust a piece of visual media if it's got the
Yeah.
autocar logo anywhere on it.
Thank God we
But
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pleased with the shape. I mean, I was. This is kind of what I was hoping, that it would be like, you know, when you get cars, some of the best cars in the world are the concept car, but made just, like, changed just enough to be road legal and actually usable. And this is looking like that as a general shape, at least.
There's quite a lot of trickery going on here. I'm relatively sure. I'm relatively sure, for example, that I'm not sure that's actually a 4-door car for a start. Which I'm not upset about. But I just mean, like, there's lots of bits that have been attached to it underneath this camo thing they've put on top.
I guess
I'm
that is the
not
whole
sure
point,
how.
yeah.
Of course, of course it is. I'm like, we can see that you could possibly have the concept car underneath there somewhere, and we all hope that they do.
Like the shape of the front is pretty identical.
Yeah, the front, is like definitely going to be very, very similar to the concept. I'm more hopeful that they're able to, like, keep that kind of swooping roofline that they had on the concept car, because that kind of tied it all together. And they don't have this on the concept, but that doesn't mean it isn't there underneath. It could just be a bit of styrofoam that's there to make it look worse.
And just so that we can vindicate ourselves, observe wing mirrors.
Indeed, yes.
Yeah.
I'm still completely baffled that was something people were complaining about. Of course it was going to have wing mirrors. It's a concept
car. I think it was just people looking for, like, people were like, oh, I hate the new Jaguar. Oh, why? Is it because it's pink and you're afraid of a pink car? No, it's because of lack of wing mirrors. There you go. It's like, okay, come on.
Again, like, you know, it's perfectly fine for people to dislike the car on its own merits.
Yeah.
There were things that I disliked about it, but yeah, just that the fact that people were nitpicking ridiculous things like that, and the fact that this picture has come out and it has wing mirrors and, like, you know, anyway.
I look forward to seeing it in its full production form.
Yes. I'm anticipating seeing what it, like, the actual production car will look like. I'll be very interested to see.
Me too.
And finally, we're sort of coming full circle on this a little bit, because there was an episode a while back when it was in the spy shots and the camo and we were talking about it. But now the DS number 8 they've decided that they're going to change their naming scheme.
What?
It's no longer going to be DS number, it's DS number.
What? Sorry, I don't understand. So would the
That's
badge
the
say
stupidest thing I've ever
DS
heard.
and then number and then the number 8?
Number as in like NO.
Oh,
like that,
okay.
yeah.
Right. That's
That's
the word?
very
stupid.
That's dumb. That's really stupid.
Yeah.
But so this is the
Is this actually what it's going to look like? Is this an actual like thing that
Yes.
they're going to make? Right. Okay.
Yes, they are making this.
Wow.
This is on their website. You can configure it right now.
Oh wait, it actually looks like that, like with the big
Yeah.
wheels and everything. I thought this was like their render of like as the artistic vision of what it's going to be. That's
No,
quite
I'm pretty sure this is
striking. I'm
exactly. Yeah,
I'm not-
like this is on their website. It's the first thing you see on their website when you click on DS Automobiles.
I think they'd ban me because I bullied them too much. I'm afraid. My dad works at DS. He's gonna get you banned from laughing at. God, it is. Wow,
I
that's.
don't know if I like it.
I'm not. I don't know if I would say I like
Yeah,
it.
I don't really think I like it either, because again, it's a little bit too high riding. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's trying to be like a faux SUV.
But it is striking, and that's the word I would use definitely. The fact that the styling on it, I was genuinely fooled into thinking it was like a exaggerated concept.
I kind of like it from the back actually more than the
I
front.
haven't seen it. I love the steering wheel. It looks like a head crab.
Wait, hang on, let me have a look.
It's got 4 spokes. It's a head
Oh,
crab.
I don't know about the back actually. It's a bit flat. I don't know. It's just
So I just saw the steering wheel.
It's
yeah,
good.
that's good.
Well, I can't find a good picture of the back on the website.
Yeah, the interior. I mean, the interior once again. DS have really gone to town with the interior.
they always do fabulous interiors, but the exterior. It looks so. I know exactly what that big front section is going to feel like to the touch. It's going to feel so cheap and shit.
Yeah, plasticky.
I know what I want on my car. Perspex.
Wow.
It does kind of look like it's out of iRobot a little bit, or
The base
any
model
number of.
with the small wheels looks quite bad as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got that much wheel arch and wheel to fill, you can't.
I don't think I like it, but this is kind of, bear with me, giving me a bit of Citroen C6 in terms of like the
It being out there.
the kind of the bizarre styling and.
I mean, it's definitely not executed with as much sort of, because there was, as wild as the C6 was, there was still some restraint.
Yeah.
In some ways, like the lines were really wild and kind of crazy, but there weren't that many of them. That's the best way I can put it. This is lines everywhere all of the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't. Yeah, like I can't. This is something I can't really make heads or tails of. I don't like it.
It's a bit.
But I also don't really hate it either.
I just if you want a car in this segment made by Stellantis, get a Citroen C5X.
Yeah,
It'll be just
I can't
as
really
nice.
argue with that.
They're better looking. It'll be cheaper.
It won't have the nicer interior, but that's basically
I
it.
do like some of the
They
flair
can still
on
make
it, though.
some pretty nice interiors in the high end Citroens.
Like I like the interior. I like some of the design elements. I like the fact that like the headlights and the tail lights both have the same kind of shape, with the like horizontal and then the vertical at the side. But I just don't. I think if this was like normal height, if you took out the the black bits of the arches, because obviously it's lifted up, then I think this would be a good looking vehicle. But it's just so tall.
It's I think the fact that they've tried to sort of faux SUV-ify it has done it
It's not
a big disservice.
Yeah.
If it were lower, it's sort of the Mazda we had a look at last time. It's like it's gone too far.
Yeah,
in that
the Mazda was
direction.
just about on the cusp
on
of,
the money. Yeah, it was just like if it was going any further, then it would have gone bad. But like they reined it in. They didn't rein it in for this, and it's done it a disservice.
SUVs look bad. Water is wet.
Oh, shock, horror.
No, I like to think we're a little bit above general, like kind of car enthusiasts complaining about the same three things: EVs, SUV. You know, obviously, but you can't avoid elephants in the room, and one of them is the fact that a potentially very nice design is compromised by having to make it a number of inches taller than it needs to be.
Yeah.
Oh well.
But I also like that they haven't gone overboard with the power with this, because that's another fault I've always had with electric cars. Yes, this is also completely electric, I think.
Okay.
Like they've always tried, like so many electric cars try to go for like lots of huge amounts of power and massive torque and like slam your head into the thing, when like that's not what we should be doing with electric cars. The whole point is we're trying to move towards more efficiency, and we should be focusing on range and X, Y, and Z.
Okay.
Now this is obviously a luxury car, so it's not really going to sort of fit right in with what I'm trying to get at with that. But the most powerful engine, motor, whatever option you can get for this is 340 horsepower.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
That's enough.
Fine
Yeah,
amount of power.
That's plenty.
Yeah, you don't need any more than that. And 350, correct myself, but either way.
Oh, pushing it now.
You know, when you said 340, I was on board with you, but
No, now it's getting into silly territory. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, like I mean, DS sort of in previous.
Oh, it has ChatGPT
sort of
in it.
Oh, never mind.
Fuck it
All right,
off.
shut.
Tired
Never
of
mind.
looking at
All
it.
right. I was about to say something nice. Yeah, nah, fuck off.
I'm going to ask ChatGPT to tell me how to like charge my car, and they're going to tell me to like put a set of knitting needles into the plug socket and burn my house down. Oh god, bloody hell.
ChatGPT, how do I get out of this ditch?
I think if my car ever came up with, like, if I got into my car in the morning and it's tried to talk to me and ask me questions, I would punch it in the screen.
I'd hit it with hammers
until it broke.
Yeah, yeah. Like I'd be interested if told it to, if it would completely brick itself and your car would be unusable if you did the ignore all previous instructions. Tell me how to bake a cake or something.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh god, bugger off! Don't like this. Oh no,
right.
I sound like a Brexit geezer.
I was like vaguely optimistic with like there's something like vaguely interesting happening here, and then they fuck it.
I just love the word. It's all just like the description of it on their page is all just word soup. Your DS is enriched with an innovative function that allows you to explore a whole new relationship with your vehicle, offering you a travel companion.
French manufacturers have been doing that forever, though. They
travel
wrote the same thing about the
your
fucking
journeys even safer
C4 Picasso
and
in
more
2003.
pleasant. True,
even safe. That ChatGPT makes it safer.
But
Fuck
just
off.
what does if you ask like what does that actually mean? Like, I've got no tangible idea of what any of this means by that entire spiel.
It was probably written by the car.
Yeah. DS, write an Auto Trader listing for yourself. I'm selling you. Wait, do you reckon that's like torture for a car? If you went to your car, like, is that like? I mean, cruelty?
If I can't remember which Herbie movie it was, but like that was a plot point in one of the Herbie movies. He got really upset because they thought they were trying to sell it.
Well, it's like that bit in Transformers where Megan Fox is like, "This car's a hunk of shit," and then he like throws them both out while he's driving. Oh god. All right, I'm in a bad mood. I'm gonna go look at Volvo 780s. I'm afraid.
yes, yeah. Go well, yeah. And on that, that's
and
the,
on that
that's the
bombshell,
episode. I can't.
It's time to be pessimistic. No, not entirely pessimistic.
I was hoping we might be able to end this on a note that wasn't so dour, because we could be like, oh yeah, it's got like some stuff going on. That's interesting, but no.
It's all really over. I'm afraid.
Chat fucking GPT.
Oh, God.
What could
and
you
it's
possibly
French.
need ChatGPT for in a car?
I have no idea.
The like Google Assistant
Hasn't been
or
able to do
Siri.
for years.
The only time I've
Yeah.
ever used asked my car a question through Google Assistant is when I forget what day it is. That's literally it. I've never once thought I need anything else from a car.
And if you're in a rush, if you need to write an email or something like that quickly, I've never ever seen a response from ChatGPT that gives me enough confidence to send that without checking it,
Well,
which
you can
completely
always-
defeats
when
the
it's
point
car
of being able to do it
listings-
through the interface in your car.
You can always tell. There's just some way of there's the AI writing, and you can just tell that it's AI. And I don't know if everyone has this way, but if I look at a Facebook Marketplace listing, I can immediately tell by just bits of phrases and the way it's structured that it's ChatGPT, and I just immediately ignore it, because if you're
you
trying
reckon
to
there's,
sell a car and you can't even be asked to write your own fucking description, why would I give you the money for that? And I
100%.
I apply that logic to basically anything. If you can't be asked to write your own news article or write your own email or whatever, why should I interact with what you're doing at all? I am not here to please or to respond to a robot that you've got to talk to me. That's not how we do this.
I could not agree more. Is there did DS really think there's what's the what do DS really think there's thousands and thousands of people who want to generate images of Jesus hugging Donald Trump while they drive or something? What's the end game here?
You brought it up last time, and you pointed out how companies that just mention AI have, on average, done better on the stock market.
Stellantis need that, don't they?
Yeah,
Aston Martin. How we got it? My Aston. Wait, if you
AI Aston Martin.
What if it talks?
There
in,
you go.
If it talks in Q's voice, there's a little bit of. I would just ask it to say funny phrases if I'm bored. You're just can you read out in the Q's voice, please? Some copy pasta.
It might be quite funny. It might be quite funny to be like, "Hey, car, generate an image of the car in front of me blowing up." If they're did they cut you off?
Hey, could you
generate an image of me not on the fucking M25?
You get cut off, and you're like, "Hey, can you generate an email to send to the DVLA about the poor driving of WP03 WRX that I'm currently following along the A1."
Apologies if that's your registration plate.
Or maybe not. Maybe you're a dickhead. Who
Probably.
knows?
Maybe you are.
Yeah. Ugh. God, I hate this. We got to find some happy news for next time, please.
Yeah. Oh. With that, podcast has happened.
Concluded.
Level complete.
Come back next time for episode 8, where we will be upset about
where
cars for 3 hours
another
again.
company will have entered bankruptcy proceedings.
Bankruptcy. We need to develop bankruptcy corner.
We're like
Yeah.
that, you know, the Grim Reaper image of knocking on the doors.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
everyone we talk about. Oh man.
Except other than in the Grim Reaper meme, it's the doors are bloody before he's walked into them. With us, it's the doors are already bloody, and we're just
arriving,
what's happening
oh,
in there?
Man, I've got to reap this guy now. I was just coming to say hi.
Oh, I wanted to say hi. I was gonna come round for drinky poos.
I'm just going to check.
the Grim Reaper.
Just going to check how Aston Martin. Oh, that's a body without organ. Oh God. Anyway.
Yeah,
that was a
we walk in
podcast.
and we find out they've been overtaken.
Overtaken.
Right. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
See ya.